Rejected by the Alpha. The Omega he tried to destroy. In every werewolf kingdom, there is one law no wolf dares challenge. The mate bond is sacred. Blessed by the moon goddess herself, it is said to unite souls across lifetimes. To reject your destined mate is rare. To survive it is even rarer. But Ava Thorne was never meant to survive. Born without status, without power, without even a wolf anyone could recognize, she spent her life learning how to disappear before people could decide she did not belong. Then came the Blood Moon Festival. The night the future Alpha of Black Hollow stood before the entire pack and rejected her.
Publicly.
Cruelly.
Completely.
The humiliation should have broken her. The pain should have destroyed her. Instead, it awakened something ancient. Something hidden for centuries beneath blood, prophecy, and forgotten kingdoms. Because Ava Thorne is not weak. She is not ordinary. And the Alpha who cast her aside has unknowingly declared war against the last bloodline the werewolf world once feared. Now kingdoms will rise. Ancient enemies will awaken. And the bond Lucian Vale tried to sever may become the very thing that destroys him. This is not the story of an Omega who stayed broken. This is the story of the woman who returned powerful enough to make an Alpha kneel. Welcome to Rejected by the Alpha. The Omega he tried to destroy. The Blood Moon Festival was supposed to change Ava Thorne's life. Instead, it destroyed it. Silver lanterns glowed across the Black Hollow pack grounds while wolves laughed, danced, and celebrated beneath crimson moonlight. Music echoed through the forest clearing, but Ava stood alone near the edge of the crowd, trying not to tremble. Tonight was the choosing. The night future Alphas confirmed their mates before the entire pack. And everyone already knew who Alpha Lucian Vale would choose. Her. For weeks, the bond between them had intensified. Every glance from him burned against her skin. Every accidental touch left her breathless. Even her wolf stirred whenever he entered a room. The moon goddess had chosen. At least she thought so. Ava, her best friend, whispered excitedly, gripping her arm. He's coming. The crowd parted instantly. Alpha Lucian stepped forward like darkness given form.
Tall, broad,
mercilessly handsome. The future Alpha of Black Hollow carried power like a weapon. His black ceremonial coat shifted behind him as wolves lowered their eyes in submission. But Lucian only looked at Ava. The mate bond slammed through her chest. Her wolf whimpered in recognition. The entire clearing fell silent. Ava's heart pounded as Lucian stopped directly in front of her. Finally. Then his expression hardened.
Cold. Detached.
Cruel. Lucian Vale, he said loudly, his voice carrying across the entire festival grounds, reject Ava Thorne as my mate. The world stopped. Gasps erupted around them. Ava physically staggered as agony ripped through her chest like claws tearing flesh from bone. The mate bond snapped violently, sending unbearable pain through her body. No, she whispered. Lucian's eyes remained emotionless.
She is weak.
Wolfless. Unworthy of standing beside an alpha. Every word hit harder than the bond breaking. The crowd began whispering immediately. Pathetic.
Broken.
Rejected. Ava could barely breathe. I refuse the bond, Lucian finished. The moon ceremony flames dimmed, and something inside Ava shattered. Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of them. Not in front of him. She lifted her chin despite the agony consuming her chest. Then she spoke the words no one expected. I accept the rejection. Silence crashed over the clearing. Even Lucian looked surprised. Ava's voice shook, but her eyes did not. But one day, she whispered, you will regret what you've done tonight. The alpha heir smirked slightly, as if the idea were impossible, as if she were nothing. The crowd laughed softly while Ava turned away, humiliation crushing her with every step. No one noticed the wind changing. No one noticed the forest suddenly falling silent. And no one saw the silver mark beginning to glow beneath the skin, over Ava's heart. Ava ran until she could no longer hear the laughter. until the music from the Blood Moon Festival faded into distant echoes swallowed by the forest. Branches tore against her skin as she stumbled deeper into the wilderness bordering Black Hollow territory. The cold night air burned to her lungs, but it was nothing compared to the agony inside her chest. The rejection bond. Every heartbeat felt like something breaking apart beneath her ribs. She collapsed against the trunk of an ancient pine, gasping for air as tears blurred her vision. Her hands pressed desperately against her chest as if she could physically hold herself together. But the pain refused to stop. The moon goddess bond was supposed to disappear after rejection. So why did it still hurt? Why could she still feel him?
Lucian.
The sound of his voice replayed endlessly in her mind.
She is weak.
Wolfless. Unworthy. A broken sob escaped her throat. For years Ava had endured whispers behind her back. She had survived pity, mockery, and isolation inside Black Hollow Pack. Wolves avoided her because she had never shifted properly. Some believed she was cursed. Others thought the moon goddess had abandoned her before birth. But Lucian had looked at her like she mattered. Until tonight. Until he destroyed her in front of everyone. Rain began falling softly through the trees. Ava barely noticed. She forced herself back to her feet and continued toward the river cliffs at the edge of Pack territory. The forest there was older than anything inside Black Hollow. Wolves rarely crossed into it after dark. The elders claimed the woods remembered things the kingdoms wanted forgotten. Tonight, Ava understood why. The deeper she walked, the stranger the forest became. The wind stopped completely.
No insects chirped.
Even the trees stood unnaturally still beneath the crimson moon. Then, a whisper drifted through the darkness. Child of Silver. Ava froze instantly. Her pulse thundered. Who's there? No answer. Only silence. She turned slowly, searching the shadows between the trees. Nothing. The whisper came again. Closer this time.
Rise.
Fear crawled down her spine. The voice was female, ancient, powerful enough to make the air itself vibrate. Ava stumbled backward toward the riverbank. Moonlight reflected across the black water like liquid silver. This isn't real, she whispered shakily. Then pain exploded through her body. Ava screamed. It started beneath her ribs. A violent burning unlike anything she had ever felt before. Her knees hit the ground as silver light burst beneath her skin in glowing veins. Every bone in her body twisted violently. Her wolf.
No.
Not possible. Ava had never fully shifted before. Not once. But now something ancient tore free inside her soul. Her fingernails sharpened into claws against the earth. Her vision sharpened instantly. She could hear the river current, the movement of leaves, the heartbeat of rabbits hidden beneath roots. Power surged through her veins like wildfire. And then, the transformation completed. Silence consumed the forest. Ava stood trembling beside the river. Not human. Wolf. But not like any wolf she had ever seen. The reflection staring back at her from the water stole her breath. Silver fur shimmered beneath the moonlight like living starlight. Her eyes glowed pale blue instead of gold or amber like normal wolves. She looked unreal.
Impossible.
Ancient. Ava staggered backward in horror.
No.
Legends flooded her memory. Stories whispered by old wolves around winter fires. The Silver Wolves. The Moonborn. An extinct bloodline tied directly to the first Luna Queen herself. Wolves blessed by the moon goddess with abilities feared by entire kingdoms. The royal bloodline vanished centuries ago during the Lunar Wars. Or so everyone believed. A branch snapped behind her.
A vaspun instantly.
3 wolves emerged silently from the darkness. Massive. Terrifying. Warriors. Their eyes locked onto her silver form with visible shock. The largest shifted first. A tall man stepped forward wearing dark leather armor marked with crescent moon symbols across his chest. Silver streaks lined his black hair despite the strength in his face. The other 2 shifted beside him. None of them attacked. Instead, the older warrior slowly lowered to one knee. Then the others followed. Ava's heart pounded violently. What are you doing? The oldest warrior looked up at her with something dangerously close to awe. "We searched for generations," he said quietly. Ava backed away another step. "You have the wrong person." "No," he answered. "We finally found her." The air around them seemed to hum with tension. The warrior's gaze fixed on her glowing silver fur. Then he spoke the words that shattered everything Ava thought she knew about herself. "The Moonborn Queen has returned." Ava stared at him speechless.
Queen? No. Impossible.
She was nobody, rejected, broken, unwanted. The warrior rose slowly to his feet. "My name is Caelum," he said carefully. "And if the Alpha who rejected you discovers what you truly are before we leave these woods," his expression darkened, "he will either beg for your forgiveness." A distant wolf howl echoed through the mountains. Caelum's face hardened instantly. "Or try to kill you." And somewhere far behind them, inside Black Hollow Pack, Alpha Lucian Vale suddenly dropped to one knee as the broken mate bond inside his chest violently reignited with silver fire. The moon hung high above the ancient forest clearing. Silver light poured through the trees like something alive, illuminating the massive stone ruins hidden deep beyond Black Hollow territory. The place felt untouched by time itself. Ava stood at the center of the clearing, unable to move. The three silver warriors surrounded her cautiously, not as guards, but as protectors. Or perhaps something far more dangerous. Reverence. Caelum stepped toward the glowing markings carved into the stone beneath her feet. Ancient runes ignited one by one beneath the moonlight, bathing the clearing in silver fire. Ava's pulse quickened. "What is this place?" "The Sanctuary of Selene," Caelum answered quietly. The name stirred something distant inside her. Not memory. Instinct. She looked around slowly. Massive statues of wolves lined the ruins, worn by centuries of storms and war. At the center stood a throne carved entirely from white stone, wrapped in glowing silver vines that seemed almost alive. "This place shouldn't exist," Ava whispered. "That is what the kingdoms wanted," Caelum replied. The older warrior removed the dark cloak from his shoulders before kneeling again. The others immediately followed. Ava stepped back in alarm. "Stop doing that." Caelum lifted his eyes toward her. "We knelt before your bloodline long before the Alpha Kings ruled these lands." The words sent cold shock through her chest. "No," Ava said instantly. "You're wrong."
I'm nobody.
Her voice cracked slightly. The truth she had known her entire life could not disappear overnight. She had spent years being ignored,
Mocked.
rejected. She had been the girl wolves pitted, the Omega no Alpha wanted. Caelum rose slowly. "You are not Omega." The silver runes beneath Ava's feet suddenly pulsed brighter. "You are Moonborn." The air itself seemed to vibrate as he spoke the word. Ava looked down at her trembling hands. Faint silver light still moved beneath her skin like veins of living moonlight. "Moonborn," she repeated softly. Caelum nodded. "The first bloodline." He walked slowly toward the ancient throne. Before the packs divided into kingdoms, before Alphas ruled through strength alone, there existed balance. The warrior turned toward her fully. The Alpha King. Lightning flashed across the mountains in the distance. And beside him, his voice lowered carefully. "The Luna Queen." Ava frowned. "I thought Lunas were mates to Alphas." "They are now," Caelum said bitterly. "But the first Luna Queens were far more than mates." The silver wolves surrounding the clearing lowered their heads instinctively. They were equals. Silence settled heavily between them. Caelum's gaze darkened. The Alpha Kings ruled power. The Moonborn Queens ruled balance. The kingdoms feared neither while they stood together. Ava's breath caught. Together? Caelum nodded once. The Alpha King could not rule without the Moonborn Queen beside him. The realization slowly began forming inside her mind. A queen only equal to the Alpha King's mate. Not beneath him. Not controlled by him. Equal. Powerful enough to stand beside the ruler of all wolves. The thought terrified her. Then what happened? The warriors exchanged dark looks. Finally Caelum answered. Power. Wind swept violently through the ruins. The Alpha Kings began believing they no longer needed balance. His voice carried centuries of bitterness. They hunted the Moonborn bloodline. Ava's stomach turned.
No.
They feared what they could not control. The silver flames surrounding the ruins suddenly rose higher. Most of the Moonborn Queens were slaughtered during the Lunar Wars. Caelum's expression softened slightly as he looked at her. But one survived. Ava's pulse thundered. The last queen hid her bloodline among ordinary wolves. The truth hit Ava all at once. Her family, the constant moving, the secrecy, her mother refusing to answer questions about their past, the fear. Oh my God. Caelum stepped closer. You are the final descendant of the Moonborn throne. Ava shook her head immediately.
No.
I can't be. You are. The silver runes beneath her feet blazed brighter suddenly. And then, a vision slammed into her mind. A woman standing beneath a silver crown. Moonlight wrapped around her like armor. Beside her stood a massive wolf king crowned in black steel. Power radiated from both of them equally. Not ruler and servant. King and queen. The vision vanished violently. Ava staggered. Caelum caught her before she fell. The throne remembers you. Her breathing became uneven. This can't be real. It is. Caelum's expression hardened. And now the kingdoms will come for you. Far beyond the mountains. Inside Black Hollow, Lucien Vale stood alone on the balcony outside his chambers. Rain poured across the kingdom below, but he barely noticed, because the mate bond would not stop burning. Every hour it grew stronger. Every moment Ava slipped farther from him, yet somehow more connected. Lucien gripped the stone railing hard enough to crack it. His wolf paced violently inside him. Find her. Claim her. Protect her. The instincts were becoming unbearable. He had rejected her. So why did the bond feel alive? A knock sounded behind him. Darius entered slowly. The council has confirmed it, his father said grimly. Lucien turned sharply. Confirmed what? The Alpha's face darkened beneath the candlelight. The silver wolves seen near our borders carry the mark of the Moonborn Guard. Lucien's chest tightened instantly. The legends are true. Silence followed. Then Darius spoke the words Lucien would never escape. You did not reject an Omega. Lightning split the sky outside. The Alpha's voice lowered. You rejected a queen. And somewhere deep within the ancient ruins, Ava Thorne unknowingly sat upon the forgotten Moonborn throne. The silver crown above it began to glow. Thousands of miles from Black Hollow, beyond the mountain borders and frozen northern seas, the Silver Fong Citadel stood beneath a storm-dark sky. Ancient, untouched, feared by every kingdom that still remembered the old wars. At the highest tower of the fortress, Alpha King Caelum Draven suddenly stopped walking.
The air changed.
A sharp pressure slammed against his chest so violently that the torches lining the stone corridor flickered out. Every guard nearby immediately dropped their gaze. Because the Alpha King had frozen completely still, Caelum's silver eyes narrowed. His wolf had gone silent, not calm, listening. Then, the bond struck. A pulse unlike anything he had ever felt exploded through his body, ancient and overwhelming enough to force a sharp breath from his lungs. Moonlight. Silver fire. A woman. His heartbeat thundered.
Impossible.
Caelum had long ago accepted he would never find a mate. The Moonborn bloodline had vanished centuries before his birth. Without the Moonborn Queen, the Alpha Kings remained incomplete. Powerful, but alone. That was the price of the Lunar Wars. Yet now, something ancient stirred awake inside him. His wolf rose violently, not with rage. Recognition.
Mine.
The word echoed through his soul. Caelum gripped the cold stone wall beside him as visions flashed through his mind. A silver throne, ancient runes glowing beneath moonlight, 3 warriors kneeling, and her, the woman standing at the center of it all. Dark hair, silver eyes, power wrapped around her like living moonlight. The vision disappeared instantly, but the bond remained.
Strong.
Ancient.
Real.
The Alpha King's breathing became uneven.
No.
Yet his wolf already knew. The Moonborn Queen had returned. Heavy footsteps approached behind him. Your Majesty? Caelum turned sharply as his beta commander entered the corridor. Ronan froze immediately, because the Alpha King looked shaken. Something no wolf had witnessed in centuries. The council waits below, Ronan said carefully. Caelum ignored him. Instead, his gaze lifted toward the storm beyond the tower windows. He could still feel her. Faintly.
Fear.
Confusion. Loneliness. And beneath it all, strength rising like a storm. The bond whispered through him again. Not weak. Never weak. Awakening. Caelum closed his eyes briefly. For years the kingdoms had believed the Moonborn extinct. But the bond did not lie. Somewhere in the south, his mate lived. Ronan's expression darkened slightly. What happened? Caelum finally looked at him. The balance has returned. The beta commander went still. Shock crossed his face instantly. That's impossible. That is what the kingdoms prayed for. Thunder shook the citadel walls. Caelum walked slowly toward the massive balcony overlooking the frozen kingdom below. Snow and silver mist stretched endlessly across the mountains beneath the storm. The Moonborn Queen has awakened. The words spread through the corridor like prophecy. Ronan stared openly now. The kingdoms will panic. Yes. Because everyone remembered the old stories. The Alpha Kings ruled power. The Moonborn Queens ruled balance. Together, they united the Wolf Kingdoms. Together, they were unstoppable. And, together, they nearly destroyed the world when betrayal shattered them centuries ago. Caelum's wolf surged again. Find her. Protect her. The instinct hit with terrifying force. Not possession. Not dominance. Devotion. The Alpha King had never experienced anything like it before. He could feel fragments of her emotions through the bond now. And suddenly, pain ripped through his chest. Caelum staggered slightly. Another vision. A crowd laughing. A woman collapsing beneath a blood moon. Rejection. Humiliation. The Alpha King's eyes darkened instantly. Someone had hurt her. The realization awakened something dangerous inside him. The air around the corridor became heavy with alpha power. Guards outside the chamber immediately dropped to one knee. Ronan swallowed carefully. My king. Caelum's voice lowered into something lethal. Who rejected her? Silence. Then the Alpha King turned toward the southern horizon. His wolf roared inside him now. Not merely for his mate. For vengeance. Because somewhere far away, the Moonborn Queen had suffered alone. And the wolf responsible had unknowingly wounded the future queen of all kingdoms. Caelum's eyes glowed silver beneath the stormlight. Prepare the royal guard. Ronan stiffened immediately. You're leaving the citadel? Yes. The storm outside intensified violently. After centuries of silence, the Alpha King's voice became deadly calm. My mate has returned to this world, far beyond the northern mountains. Inside the sanctuary of Selene, Ava suddenly pressed her hand against her chest. Warmth wrapped around the broken remains of the bond. Different from Lucian. Older, stronger, protective. A voice echoed faintly through her soul. I found you. Asterisk. Ava's breathing stopped. Caelum immediately stepped forward. What is it? Ava looked toward the distant northern horizon. Confusion filled her silver eyes. I think. The bond pulsed again, powerful enough to shake the ancient runes beneath her feet. Someone can feel me. The northern storms obeyed Alpha King Caelum Draven. Not by command, by instinct. As the massive black wolves of the royal guard raced across the frozen cliffs beneath Silverfang Citadel, the skies themselves darkened above them. Snow whipped violently through the mountains while silver lightning split the clouds overhead. The kingdom knew what it meant. The Alpha King had left the citadel. For the first time in nearly a century. No one dared ask why. But whispers spread anyway. The Moonborn Queen has returned. Caelum rode at the front of the royal guard, his dark cloak snapping violently behind him as his wolf paced restlessly beneath his skin. Every mile strengthened the bond. He could feel her more clearly now, the warmth of her breath, the fear she tried to hide, the confusion consuming her, and beneath it all, the rising force of her power. His wolf had stopped resisting hours ago. Now it only wanted one thing: find her. The mate bond pulled him south like destiny itself. Ronan rode beside him carefully. You truly believe she's the last Moonborn? Caelum's silver eyes remained fixed ahead. The bond does not lie. But if the southern kingdoms discover you're moving toward Black Hollow territory, they already know. The beta commander fell silent, because the signs had begun appearing across every kingdom by dawn. Silver lightning, moonlit storms, ancient runes glowing in places untouched for centuries. The world itself was reacting to her awakening, and that terrified the rulers who remembered history. Far to the south, inside Black Hollow, Lucian Vale could barely breathe. The bond had become unbearable. He stood in the training arena before sunrise, trying to drown the feeling beneath combat and exhaustion, but nothing worked. Every heartbeat carried Ava's presence. Every breath reminded him she was slipping farther away. And worse, someone else had found her. Lucian could feel it. A second presence touched the bond now. Ancient, massive, terrifyingly powerful. His wolf reacted instantly every time it appeared. Not with dominance. With caution. Lucian slammed another warrior hard into the dirt before turning away in frustration. What's wrong with him? One of the pack wolves whispered. He hasn't slept. He nearly shifted during council. Lucian ignored them, but the truth burned beneath his skin. His wolf was afraid. Not of losing Ava, of the male connected to her. A palace guard suddenly ran into the arena breathless. Alpha Lucian. Lucian turned sharply. What? The northern borders. The guards swallowed visibly. Silverfang banners had been seen crossing the Frost Pass. The entire arena went silent. Lucian's stomach dropped.
Impossible.
The Silverfang kingdom never crossed into southern territories. Not unless there was war. Lucian stepped forward slowly. Who leads them? The guard's face lost color. The Alpha King. Silence crashed through the arena. Every wolf there understood the danger immediately. Caelum Draven, the king of the north, the strongest alpha alive. A ruler so feared most kingdoms avoided speaking his name aloud. Lucian felt the mate bond ignite violently again. And suddenly, for one terrifying moment, he saw through the connection. Snowstorms. Silver eyes glowing beneath moonlight. An enormous black wolf racing through the northern mountains. Coming for her. Lucian staggered backward.
No.
His wolf snarled violently inside him. Protect her. The instinct hit so hard it almost hurt. But another realization followed immediately after.
He no longer had the right.
Because he had rejected her. Yet the thought of another alpha reaching her first nearly shattered him. Lucian grabbed the nearest table hard enough to splinter the wood. Prepare my horse. The nearby wolves froze. Alpha. Lucian's voice lowered dangerously.
Now.
Meanwhile, inside the sanctuary of Selene, Ava stood before the ancient mirror chamber, while silver fire danced along the walls around her. The Moonborn crown rested untouched beside the throne. She still had not accepted it. Could not. Every part of her life had changed too quickly. Yesterday, she had been nothing. Today, warriors knelt before her. The bond pulsed again. Stronger this time. Ava pressed her hand against her chest. That warmth returned instantly. Protective. Steady. Different from Lucian's bond. This one felt ancient. Safe. Caelum watched her carefully from across the chamber. You feel him. Ava looked up sharply. Him. The Alpha King. The title sent unease through her instantly. I don't understand what's happening. Caelum stepped closer slowly. The Moonborn Queen and the Alpha King were created together. Ava frowned. But Lucian is not the Alpha King. Silence followed. Caelum's expression hardened slightly. He rejected what the moon goddess chose. Ava looked toward the glowing mirror uncertainly. Then who is? The ancient mirror suddenly rippled like water. A vision formed across its surface. Snowstorms. A black wolf running beneath silver skies. And beside him, a man with glowing silver eyes.
Tall. Dark.
Crowned in black armor. Power radiated from him like something born from war itself. Ava's breathing stopped. The male lifted his head slightly inside the vision, as if he could sense her watching. Then their eyes met through the mirror. The mate bond exploded. Ava gasped sharply as warmth flooded every part of her body. Not pain. Recognition. The male's expression darkened instantly. Possessive. Protective.
Certain.
And then, his voice echoed softly through the bond. I found you, my queen. The vision vanished instantly. Ava staggered backward, shaken. Caelum lowered his head slightly. The Alpha King has awakened, far beyond the mountains. Caelum Draven looked toward the southern horizon beneath the storm, and smiled for the very first time in years. The southern kingdom's new fear before dawn arrived. Messengers rode through the night carrying the same impossible warning to every Alpha territory. The Alpha King of the North had crossed the Frost Pass, and wherever Caelum Draven traveled, war often followed. Inside Black Hollow Castle, tension poised in the air. Lucien Vale stood before the massive strategy table in the council chamber while elders argued around him in rising panic. We should close the borders immediately. The northern wolves outnumber us 3-1. If Caelum is truly moving south for the Moonborn Queen, she is still part of Black Hollow. Lucien's hands tightened against the stone table.
Ava.
Every conversation now revolved around her. Not as an Omega, not as the rejected girl they once mocked, but as the Moonborn Queen powerful enough to shift the balance of every kingdom alive. And Lucien hated how much the truth burned, because now everyone looked at her differently. Valuable. Powerful. Wanted. The exact opposite of how they treated her before. His wolf snarled viciously. Too late. The bond pulsed sharply again. Lucien staggered slightly as another emotion flooded through him. Not Ava's. His. Protectiveness. Jealousy. Rage. Because the closer Caelum traveled toward her, the stronger the mate bond became. Lucien slammed both hands against the table hard enough to crack the stone. She is not his. The room fell silent instantly. Alpha Darius slowly lifted his gaze toward his son. You forfeited the right to claim her when you rejected her. Lucien's jaw tightened. I was wrong. The words tasted like poison, but they were true. The realization had begun destroying him from the inside out. He remembered every moment Ava had looked at him with hope. Every time she had stood quietly at the edge of the pack gatherings while others whispered about her. And worst of all, the look in her eyes when he rejected her beneath the blood moon. Lucien closed his eyes briefly. He had broken her. And now another Alpha King could feel her through the bond. A king stronger than him, older than him, destined for her in ways Lucien still barely understood. Alpha, Marcus said carefully, we need to prepare for Caelum's arrival. Lucien opened his eyes slowly.
No.
The room went still. Darius frowned. What are you planning? Lucien looked toward the storm outside the chamber windows. Then his voice lowered dangerously. I'm finding Ava before he does. Far beyond Black Hollow, the sanctuary of Selene pulsed with silver light. Ava stood alone near the ancient reflecting pools while moonlight danced across the ruins around her. The mate bond had not stopped burning since the vision. Caelum Draven, the Alpha King. Even thinking his name sent warmth through her chest. Different from Lucien's bond. Lucien's had once felt consuming, possessive, overwhelming. But Caelum's, it felt safe.
Steady.
Like something ancient reaching for her gently instead of trying to control her. That terrified her most, because part of her already trusted it. A soft growl echoed nearby. Ava looked up as one of the silver wolves approached the water's edge before lowering itself beside her silently. The massive wolf's glowing blue eyes reflected moonlight across the pool. You feel him too, don't you? Ava whispered. The wolf huffed softly. Caelum stepped from the shadows behind her. The entire sanctuary feels him. Ava looked over her shoulder.
He's really coming here.
Yes. And Lucien? Caelum's expression darkened slightly. He feels the bond weakening. Ava frowned. Weakening. The moon goddess never intended the rejected bond to survive once the true balance awakened. The words settled heavily inside her. Lucien had been part of her soul once. Or at least she thought he had.
But now,
Every time she felt Caelum through the bond, the pain Lucien caused faded a little more. Not forgotten, but no longer controlling her. Ava looked down at her trembling hands. What if I'm not ready for this? Caelum stepped closer carefully. The Moonborn Queens were never chosen because they were ready. The silver flames surrounding the ruins flickered softly. They were chosen because they were strong enough to become what the world needed. Silence followed. Then suddenly, the ancient runes beneath the sanctuary floor ignited violently. Ava gasped as the bond slammed through her chest again. Powerful.
urgent, not fear.
Warning. Caelum's eyes widened instantly. He's close. Far to the north, Caelum Draven stood at the edge of a frozen cliff overlooking the southern valleys below. His black wolf paced beside him beneath the storm. The mate bond burned like wildfire now. He could almost hear her breathing. Almost feel her heartbeat. Then, another presence touched the connection. Sharp. Possessive.
Male.
Caelum's eyes darkened instantly.
Lucien Valley.
The rejected Alpha. The growl that escaped the Alpha King shook the snow-covered cliffs around him. Ronan looked toward him carefully. What is it? Caelum's silver gaze remained fixed southward. He's going after her. The storm intensified instantly. Lightning exploded across the sky. The Alpha King mounted his horse in one smooth motion. Then we ride faster. Meanwhile, deep within Black Hollow territory, Lucien Vale crossed into the forbidden forest alone beneath the blood moon. The mate bond guided him deeper into darkness with every step.
Toward Ava.
Toward destiny. And toward the Alpha King already hunting for his queen. The forbidden forest did not welcome ordinary wolves. Ancient trees twisted toward the blood moon like claws, their branches thick enough to block the stars themselves. Shadows moved unnaturally between the ruins, whispering with magic older than any kingdom. Yet Lucien Vale continued deeper into the darkness.
Alone.
The mate bond guided every step. Pain burned beneath his ribs with relentless force now, pulling him toward Ava like destiny itself refused to release him. His wolf had become almost feral. Find her. Before he does. Lucien's jaw tightened. Caelum Draven. Even thinking the Alpha King's name ignited rage inside him. The bond between Ava and the Northern King was growing stronger by the hour. Lucien could feel it every time their connection pulsed. Ancient.
Perfect.
Chosen. And for the first time in his life, Lucien understood fear. Because deep down he knew the truth. The moon goddess had never intended Ava for him. She had intended her for a king. Far ahead, silver light suddenly flashed between the trees. Lucien froze instantly. The bond surged violently.
Ava.
Without hesitation, he sprinted toward the light. Meanwhile, inside the sanctuary of Selene, Ava stood in the center of the ancient rune circle while moonlight poured through the broken ceiling overhead. The silver crown floated above the throne once more. Waiting. The bond with Caelum had not faded since the vision. If anything, it had grown dangerously stronger. Every few moments she could feel him. His determination. His fury. His need to reach her. And beneath it all, devotion. The feeling unsettled her deeply because it felt real. Not obsession. Not dominance. Something far more dangerous.
Care.
Caelum watched her carefully from the edge of the chamber. The bond is stabilizing. Ava looked at him uneasily. It feels like he's inside my mind. The Alpha King and Moonborn Queen were never separated by distance. The silver wolves surrounding the sanctuary lifted their heads suddenly. Every single one growled low. Caelum's expression darkened instantly. He's here. Ava's pulse stopped. Caelum?
No.
The growling intensified. Lucien. The bond snapped violently through Ava's chest at the sound of his name. Pain followed immediately after. Not because she loved him, because the broken rejection bond still remained unfinished. The sanctuary doors exploded open. Lucien Vale stepped into the chamber breathing heavily, moonlight cutting across his dark clothing as his gaze locked instantly onto Ava. Everything else disappeared. The silver flames, the wolves, the ancient throne. Only her existed. Ava stared back at him silently. For the first time since the rejection, Lucien truly saw what stood before him. Not the uncertain Omega he once dismissed.
A queen.
Power radiated around her like living moonlight. Silver markings glowed faintly beneath her skin while ancient runes beneath her feet answered her presence instinctively. Beautiful, untouchable, and slipping farther beyond his reach with every second. Lucien took a step toward her. Ava. The silver wolves snarled instantly. Caelum moved in front of her protectively. You should not have come here. Lucien's eyes darkened. This doesn't concern you. It concerns every kingdom. The two alphas stared at each other with rising hostility. Ava felt the tension immediately. Caelum was strong, but Lucien carried desperation now. And desperate wolves were dangerous. Lucien looked back at Ava again. I need to speak to you alone. Caelum's voice lowered.
No.
The rejection bond suddenly flared violently between Ava and Lucien, silver energy erupting through the chamber hard enough to shake the sanctuary walls. Ava gasped sharply. Lucien staggered. Their eyes locked again instantly. Emotion slammed through the connection. Regret.
Pain. Need.
Lucien's voice broke slightly. I was wrong. Silence consumed the chamber. Ava's heart twisted painfully, because once upon a time, hearing those words would have meant everything to her.
But now
another bond lived beside it. Older, stronger.
Destined.
Lucien stepped forward again despite the wolves. I didn't know who you were. Ava's silver eyes hardened. That's the problem. The words struck him harder than any weapon. You only see value in me now because others do. Lucien looked shaken. That's not true. Isn't it? Silver fire flickered violently around the sanctuary. You humiliated me in front of the entire pack. Every word carried pain she could no longer hide. You called me weak. Lucien's expression darkened with guilt. Ava. You rejected me. The bond pulsed violently again. Ava pressed her hand against her chest, trying to steady herself. Lucien immediately moved instinctively toward her. At the exact same moment, a terrifying roar echoed outside the sanctuary. Every wolf in the chamber froze. Caelum's face lost color.
No.
The mate bond exploded through Ava's chest like wildfire. Warmth.
Power.
Possession. Ancient and overwhelming. And suddenly, a deep voice thundered through the sanctuary entrance. Step away from my queen. Silence crashed across the chamber. Then the shadows at the doorway shifted. Alpha King Caelum Draven emerged beneath the moonlight. And every wolf present immediately lowered their gaze. The sanctuary trembled beneath the Alpha King's presence. Moonlight poured through the shattered ceiling above as silver fire spiraled across the ancient runes carved into the floor. Every wolf inside the chamber remained frozen. Not by fear alone, by instinct. Because Alpha King Caelum Draven carried the kind of power that demanded submission. Even the ancient wolves of the Moonborn Guard lowered their heads as he stepped fully into the sanctuary.
Tall.
Crowned in black steel and shadow. Silver eyes burning beneath the blood moon. And every part of him focused entirely on Ava. Lucien moved first. A low growl ripped from his chest as he stepped between them protectively. You don't belong here. Caelum's expression never changed. Neither do you. The air between the two alphas turned lethal instantly. Power rolled through the sanctuary hard enough to crack the stone beneath their feet. Red energy flared around Lucien, while silver lightning danced along Caelum's skin. Ava felt the collision of their wolves like a storm inside her chest. One bond burned with regret, the other with destiny. Caelum immediately moved beside Ava. This place is sacred, he warned sharply. No blood can be spilled here. Neither alpha listened. Lucien's gaze darkened as he looked at Caelum. You crossed kingdoms for a female you've never met. Caelum finally spoke.
No.
His silver eyes shifted briefly toward Ava again. I crossed kingdoms for my queen. The words hit the sanctuary like prophecy. Ava's breath caught. Lucien's face hardened instantly. She is not yours. Caelum's wolf surged violently beneath his skin. The silver flames around the sanctuary rose higher in response. The moon chose long before either of us were born. Lucien stepped closer dangerously. I rejected her. A dark silence followed. Then, for the first time, real emotion crossed Caelum's face. Disgust. You rejected the Moonborn Queen? Every wolf in the chamber lowered their gaze immediately. Even Lucien felt the shame of it now. But jealousy burned hotter. Because the moment Caelum looked at Ava, the mate bond reacted violently. Ancient runes exploded with silver light beneath the sanctuary floor. Ava gasped sharply as warmth flooded her entire body. The bond. It was choosing. And everyone felt it. Caelum's gaze locked onto her instantly. Not possession. Recognition. Like his soul had finally found something it spent centuries searching for. Lucien felt it too. The terrifying shift in the bond. The connection between him and Ava weakened further, while the one between Ava and Caelum became nearly unbearable. Lucien's wolf snarled desperately inside him.
Meaning.
But another instinct answered immediately. Too late. Caelum slowly approached Ava. Every step caused the silver flames to rise higher. The sanctuary itself responded to him, accepted him. Ava's pulse thundered as he finally stopped before her. Up close, the Alpha King felt overwhelming. Not merely powerful, ancient, like war and devotion had been carved directly into his soul. Yet when he looked at her, his expression softened. The change stunned her more than anything. You're real, he said quietly. The bond pulsed warm between them. Ava swallowed uneasily. You can feel it too. Caelum's eyes darkened. I have felt you across kingdoms. Lucien clenched his fists hard enough to bleed. Every instinct screamed at him to pull her away. But the sanctuary itself seemed to stand against him now. Silver runes glowed brighter beneath Caelum and Ava, while the bond wrapped around them like living moonlight. Caelum slowly lowered to one knee. Then the Moonborn wolves followed, one by one, until only Lucien remained standing. Ava stared around the sanctuary in shock. What are they doing? Caelum lifted his head. The moon has acknowledged its king. Lucien's face lost color.
No.
The sanctuary was choosing Caelum, choosing him for her. The realization shattered something inside him. Caelum extended his hand slowly toward Ava. Not demanding. Offering. A queen beside a king.
Equal.
The mate bond hummed violently the closer she moved toward him. Ava looked at his hand, then at Lucien. Pain crossed Lucien's face openly now. Not rage.
Loss.
For the first time since the rejection, Ava saw genuine regret in him. But regret could not undo what he destroyed. And deep inside, the moon had already chosen. Ava slowly placed her hand in Caelum's. The sanctuary erupted. Silver fire exploded through the chamber as the bond snapped fully into place between them. Ancient symbols blazed across the walls while the Moonborn throne illuminated behind them like a second moon. Caelum inhaled sharply.
The bond.
Complete. Not marked. Not sealed. But awakened. His wolf immediately fell silent. Content.
Certain. Meaning.
Ava felt it too.
Not ownership.
Belonging. The kind that reached beyond fear, beyond kingdoms, beyond time itself. Lucien staggered backward as the remaining bond between him and Ava finally cracked. Not broken entirely, but no longer whole. The moon had chosen its king. And it was not him. Outside the sanctuary, the storm above the mountains split open beneath silver lightning. And across every wolf kingdom in the world, the ancient Moonborn symbols began glowing once more. The bond changed everything. The moment Ava placed her hand in Caelum Draven's, the ancient magic buried beneath the sanctuary of Selene awakened completely. Silver light flooded the ruins. The Moonborn throne blazed like a second moon. And, across every wolf kingdom, the old symbols returned. Hidden runes carved into forgotten temples glowed for the first time in centuries. Ancient wolves woke from dreams whispering the same terrifying truth. The Moonborn Queen had chosen her king. Inside the sanctuary, silence followed the explosion of power. Not peaceful silence. The kind that comes after destiny reshapes the world. Ava slowly pulled her hand back from Caelum's. But the bond remained. Stronger now.
Alive.
She could feel him completely.
His heartbeat.
His emotions. His wolf. And beneath all of it, a devotion so fierce it nearly frightened her. Caelum looked at her as though the world had finally become real. Not obsession. Not ownership. Recognition. Like some missing part of his soul had returned after centuries of silence. Lucian staggered backward another step. The sanctuary itself no longer answered him. Every rune, every flame, every ancient wolf there acknowledged only one truth now. Caelum Draven stood beside the Moonborn Queen. The rejected Alpha lowered his gaze briefly. Pain crossed his face openly, because the bond no longer belonged to him. Not truly. And deep down, he knew it never had. Caelum finally rose from one knee. The moon has spoken. His voice echoed through the chamber like prophecy. The balance is restored. Caelum's expression darkened slightly at those words. Not yet. The Alpha King slowly turned toward the ancient throne towering behind them. The kingdoms will never allow this peacefully. Caelum nodded grimly. They feared the Moonborn before. His silver eyes shifted toward Ava. They will fear her even more now. Ava swallowed uneasily. The weight of it all pressed heavily against her chest. She had spent her entire life invisible, unwanted. Now kingdoms would rise or fall because of her existence. The thought terrified her. Caelum immediately sensed it through the bond. His attention returned to her instantly. You are not alone in this. The warmth in his voice startled her. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. Not as someone worth protecting, worth standing beside. Lucian's jaw tightened as he watched the exchange. Jealousy tore through him violently, because Caelum understood instinctively what Lucian failed to see until it was too late. Ava was never weak. She had only been hidden. The sanctuary doors suddenly burst open. One of the Moonborn guards rushed inside, breathing hard. Caelum, the warrior, turned sharply. What happened? The western borders. Fear crossed the guard's face. 3 southern kingdoms have mobilized their armies. Silence crashed across the chamber. Caelum cursed quietly beneath his breath. They moved faster than expected. Caelum's expression became instantly lethal. They already know. Yes. The guards swallowed visibly. They know the Moonborn Queen has awakened. Ava felt cold. They're coming for me. Caelum stepped forward immediately. They'll have to cross me first. The certainty in his voice shook something deep inside her. Not arrogance. Promise. The Alpha King meant every word. Caelum looked towards Caelum carefully. The southern rulers will see you standing beside her as a declaration of war. Caelum's silver eyes darkened. Then they should remember who the war will be against. The air inside the sanctuary became heavy instantly. Alpha King power rolled through the chamber hard enough to make the silver flames rise higher. Even Lucian looked unsettled, because Caelum was not merely stronger than other alphas. He was something older. The last true Alpha King. And now, the moon itself had crowned him. Far above the sanctuary, storm clouds split apart suddenly. Moonlight poured through the mountains in silver waves. The ancient crown hovering above the throne began descending slowly toward Ava. Every wolf in the sanctuary lowered themselves instantly. Even Caelum bowed deeply. Ava stared upward in shock. What is it doing? Caelum lifted his gaze carefully. The throne has accepted you. The crown stopped inches before Ava. Silver fire spiraled around it like living stars. Caelum stepped beside her slowly. Not ahead of her. Beside her. Equal. Ava looked at him nervously. What happens if I take it? Caelum held her gaze steadily. The world changes. The bond pulsed warmly between them. And somewhere beyond the mountains, entire kingdoms prepared for war against the Queen. The moon had finally returned. The crown descended slowly beneath the moonlight. Silver fire spiraled around Ava as the ancient moonborn diadem hovered inches above her head, illuminating the sanctuary in blinding light. Every wolf remained bowed. Every flame bent toward her. And beside the throne, Alpha King Caelum Draven stood unmoving, his silver eyes locked entirely on the woman fate had chosen for him. Ava's pulse thundered. The weight of destiny pressed heavily against her chest now.
Queen.
The word still felt impossible, yet the sanctuary itself answered her existence. The throne glowed brighter with every breath she took. The bond between her and Caelum pulsed warm and steady, wrapping around her soul like moonlight itself. And, for the first time, since the blood moon rejection, she no longer felt broken. She felt seen. Lucien watched everything from the shadows near the sanctuary entrance. Every second twisted deeper inside him, because he remembered the girl no one noticed. The quiet Omega standing alone at the edge of pack gatherings. The female who looked at him like he was her entire world. And now, she stood beside a king. Radiant. Untouchable. Chosen by the moon itself. Lucien lowered his gaze briefly. The guilt was becoming unbearable. But guilt did not stop what was coming. Outside the sanctuary, the war horn sounded.
Deep.
Ancient. Terrifying. Caelan's head snapped toward the mountains instantly. They've arrived. Caelum's expression darkened. The warmth in the sanctuary vanished immediately beneath something far more dangerous. Protectiveness. The Alpha King stepped in front of Ava instinctively as the bond flared violently between them. Ava looked toward the ruined entrance, uneasily. How many? One of the Moonborn guards rushed into the chamber, breathing hard. 3 southern armies. Silence crashed across the sanctuary. Caelum cursed quietly. They united faster than expected. Another guard entered moments later. The Crimson Claw Kingdom. The Iron Fang territory. And Black Hollow Wolves. Ava froze. Lucien's face lost color instantly.
No.
But he already knew. His father, Alpha Darius Vale, had sided with the southern rulers. Not to protect Ava. To control her. Caelum's silver eyes became lethal. They came for a queen. The sanctuary shook suddenly as distant explosions echoed through the mountains. The war had already begun. Ava's chest tightened. This is happening because of me. Caelum turned toward her instantly.
No.
The force in his voice silenced the entire chamber. This is happening because kingdoms fear what they cannot chain. The bond pulsed warmly again, steadying her, grounding her. Then Caelum gently lifted his hand toward her face. Not possessive, careful, as if touching her mattered. Ava's breath caught when his fingers brushed softly against her cheek. Every wolf in the sanctuary immediately lowered their gaze further. Because the Alpha King had just touched his queen. And the bond answered. Silver light exploded across the chamber. The sanctuary walls trembled violently as ancient runes ignited brighter than ever before. Outside, the storm over the mountains darkened into black clouds streaked with silver lightning. Caelum stared at the sky in shock. The Moonborn magic is responding to them. Caelum's expression remained calm, but his wolf had become something terrifying beneath the surface. Ava could feel it through the bond. Not fear.
Rage. Pure, merciless rage.
Because armies were marching toward her.
Toward his queen.
And suddenly, Ava understood something terrifying about Caelum Draven. The Alpha King was not cruel by nature, but for the people he loved, he could become devastating. A distant crash shook the sanctuary again. This time closer. The enemy forces had breached the outer ruins. Lucien immediately stepped forward. They'll reach the sanctuary within minutes. Caelum looked towards Caelum sharply. We need to move the queen.
No.
The single word froze the chamber. Caelum slowly turned toward the sanctuary entrance. Silver lightning flashed across his dark armor beneath the moonlight. They crossed sacred ground. The air became unbearably heavy. Every wolf present instinctively lowered themselves further, because the Alpha King's power was no longer restrained. It rolled through the sanctuary like a coming storm. Ava felt the darkness inside him rising. Violent, ancient, protective. Caelum looked back toward her once more, and his voice lowered into something deadly calm. No one touches you. The bond ignited violently between them. A promise, an oath, a king to his queen. Outside, the first enemy wolves emerged from the ruins beneath the blood moon.
Hundreds of them.
Weapons drawn, eyes burning with fear and greed. Then the sanctuary doors slowly opened. Caelum stepped forward alone. Silver lightning exploded across the sky behind him. The enemy wolves immediately stopped moving, because standing beneath the storm, the Alpha King no longer looked entirely mortal. His silver eyes glowed like moonfire. Ancient markings blazed beneath his skin. And his wolf had become something monstrous. Caelum's voice thundered across the battlefield. You came for my queen. The storm answered him. Lightning split the mountains apart. Then the Alpha King smiled.
Cold.
Merciless.
Terrifying.
Then let the world remember why kings once feared the moon. The battlefield fell silent when Caelum Draven stepped into the storm. Hundreds of wolves stood frozen beyond the sanctuary ruins beneath the blood moon. Armor gleamed beneath silver lightning while war banners snapped violently in the wind. 3 kingdoms had come for the Moonborn Queen. 3 armies. Thousands of wolves. And yet, none of them moved, because the Alpha King standing before them radiated something older than fear. Power rolled across the mountains like thunder itself. The storm bent around Caelum as silver markings blazed beneath his skin, illuminating the darkness with ancient light. Ava stood just inside the sanctuary entrance, unable to breathe. Through the bond, she could feel what the enemy wolves felt. Terror. Not of death. Of him. Caelum slowly drew the black blade strapped across his back. The weapon shimmered beneath the stormlight, ancient runes glowing silver along the steel. Caelan's expression darkened instantly. The king's blade. Ava looked toward him. What is it? Caelan swallowed carefully. The weapon carried by the first Alpha King during the Lunar Wars. Lightning split the sky overhead. No king has wielded it in centuries. Outside the ruins, the enemy commanders finally stepped forward. Alpha Darius Vale stood among them. Beside him waited the rulers of Crimson Claw and Iron Fang, their wolves pacing restlessly beneath the storm. Lucian stared openly at his father in disbelief. You brought armies against her? Darius' expression remained cold. She is too dangerous to live uncontrolled. Ava flinched slightly at the words. Caelum felt it instantly through the bond. His wolf exploded with fury. The storm darkened. Every torch across the battlefield extinguished simultaneously. And when Caelum spoke, even the mountains seemed to listen. You march armies toward my queen. His silver eyes glowed brighter. And still speak of control? The force behind his voice shook the battlefield hard enough to crack stone. Several wolves immediately dropped their gaze. Others stepped backward instinctively, because deep down, every wolf alive carried ancient instincts older than kingdoms. And those instincts recognized the male standing before them. The War King. The ruler wolves once feared enough to unite against centuries ago. Alpha Marcus from Iron Fang stepped forward shakily. The Moonborn bloodline nearly destroyed the world. Caelum's expression never changed.
No.
Silver lightning exploded overhead. Betrayal destroyed it. The battlefield went silent again. Darius raised his chin coldly. You expect the kingdoms to kneel before her? Caelum slowly looked back toward Ava standing beneath the sanctuary light. The fury inside him softened instantly. The contrast stunned everyone watching, because only moments ago the Alpha King looked capable of destroying armies.
Now.
He looked at Ava like she was the only thing keeping the darkness inside him restrained. I expect nothing, Caelum said quietly. His eyes returned to the enemy forces. But if you threaten her again, the storm roared violently. I will bury kingdoms. The bond ignited hot between him and Ava. not fear. Promise. A king's vow. Ava's heart thundered painfully against her ribs. No one had ever stood before danger for her before. No one had ever chosen her. Not completely. Not without hesitation. Yet Caelum stood alone before entire armies as though the outcome no longer mattered, because protecting her mattered more. Lucian felt it too. And somehow that hurt worse than losing the bond itself, because he finally understood the difference between what he felt for Ava and what Caelum felt. Lucian once wanted her. Caelum would destroy the world for her. A horn suddenly sounded from the enemy lines. The Iron Fang wolves surged forward first. The battle began. Everything happened instantly. Silver wolves exploded from the sanctuary ruins as Caelum and the Moonborn Guard collided with the first wave of attackers. Claws and steel crashed beneath the storm while wolves shifted midair across the battlefield. Ava gasped as chaos erupted. Lucian immediately moved toward her protectively. "Stay behind me." But Caelum's roar shook the mountains before Lucian could reach her. The Alpha King shifted. Darkness exploded across the battlefield. His massive black wolf towered above the enemy lines beneath silver lightning, ancient markings glowing across his fur like moonfire itself. The enemy wolves froze in terror, because Caelum was enormous, monstrous, a king born for war. Then he attacked. The battlefield shattered beneath him. Wolves flew across the ruins as the Alpha King tore through enemy forces with terrifying precision. Lightning followed every movement while silver fire erupted beneath his claws. Ava felt every emotion through the bond. Fury, violence, protection, and beneath all of it, the overwhelming instinct to return to her alive. One enemy wolf lunged toward the sanctuary entrance. Lucian intercepted him instantly, shifting mid-motion as battle consumed the ruins around them. Ava staggered backward as silver flames spiraled violently through the sanctuary. The throne was reacting.
No.
The throne was awakening fully. Caelum's voice echoed across the chaos. "Ava." She turned sharply. The crown, the Moonborn crown floated above the throne blazing brighter than ever before. Silver light consumed the chamber. And outside, the Alpha King tore through armies beneath the blood moon while the world remembered why kings once feared the moon. The battle raged beneath the blood moon. Steel clashed against claws while lightning split the mountains apart in silver fire. Wolves fought across the ruined sanctuary grounds as the ancient forest burned around them. But inside the sanctuary of Selene, everything changed. Ava stood frozen before the Moonborn throne as the crown hovered above her, radiating unbearable light. The bond between her and Caelum pulsed violently through her soul. Outside, she could feel him fighting. Every strike, every wound, every ounce of fury he unleashed to protect her. And it terrified her how much she felt it all. Caelum rushed toward her through the glowing chamber. "Ava." She turned sharply. "The throne is calling you." The sanctuary walls trembled violently as ancient runes spiraled across the floor beneath her bare feet. Silver flames climbed the pillars while the Moonborn crown descended lower. Waiting. Choosing. Ava's breathing became uneven. "I don't know how to do this." Caelum's expression softened briefly despite the chaos outside. "You already are." Another violent crash shook the sanctuary. Enemy wolves had breached the outer ruins. Lucian burst through the chamber doors seconds later covered in blood and ash. "They're pushing through the eastern gate." Caelum immediately moved protectively in front of Ava. "We don't have time." Outside, Caelum's roar shook the mountains. Ava felt pain explode through the bond. Not mortal, but enough to make her stagger. Lucian caught her before she could fall. Their eyes locked briefly. For the first time since the rejection, there was no anger between them, only grief. Lucian's voice lowered quietly. "He's fighting an entire army for you." The truth of it hit harder than she expected, because Caelum had never hesitated. Not once. Not even when kingdoms marched against him. Ava looked toward the sanctuary entrance where silver lightning illuminated the battlefield beyond. Through the bond, she could feel Caelum weakening. Still fighting. still protecting her, still refusing to fall.
And suddenly,
Something inside her broke open.
not fear, power.
The sanctuary erupted with silver light. Lucian stepped backward instantly as moonfire spiraled around Ava's body. The runes beneath the throne ignited brighter than ever before while the crown finally descended onto her head. The moment it touched her, the world stopped. Ava gasped sharply as ancient memories slammed into her mind. Queens crowned beneath moonlight, Alpha Kings kneeling beside them, kingdoms united beneath silver banners.
Va.
Betrayal,
Blood.
the fall of the Moonborn. And through all of it, one truth remained. The Moonborn Queens were never created to rule alone. They were created to stand beside the Alpha King. Equal, balanced, unbreakable. Silver markings exploded across Ava's skin. The sanctuary shook violently. Outside, every wolf on the battlefield suddenly froze.
Because the moon itself changed.
The blood moon faded. Silver light consumed the sky. Enemy wolves began stepping backward in fear. The queen, one of the southern alphas, stared toward the sanctuary in horror. She's crowned. Then the sanctuary doors exploded outward. Ava emerged beneath silver moonlight, and the battlefield fell silent. The Moonborn crown glowed above her dark hair like living starlight. Ancient markings shimmered across her skin while silver fire moved around her like it recognized her completely. No one breathed. No one moved, because the female standing before them no longer looked mortal. She looked divine. Caelum slowly rose from the battlefield below her. Blood covered his armor. Silver lightning burned across his skin. Yet the moment he saw her, everything else disappeared. The bond between them ignited with devastating force. A king and queen finally awakened together. Ava felt his exhaustion through the bond.
The pain.
The wounds. The relentless need to protect her. And something deep inside her answered immediately. The Moonborn power surged outward violently. Silver light exploded across the battlefield. Enemy wolves screamed as ancient magic forced them backward across the ruins. The ground itself cracked beneath moonfire while storm clouds spiraled around the sanctuary. The kingdoms had come for a helpless Omega. Instead, they found the queen the moon had chosen. Darius Vale stared openly at Ava in horror. This is impossible. Caelum stepped beside her slowly, despite the blood running down his arm. No, the Alpha King said quietly. His silver eyes never left Ava. It is destiny. The bond wrapped around them both like living fire. And for the first time in centuries, the Moonborn Queen stood crowned beside her king, while kingdoms trembled beneath the moon. The battlefield remained frozen beneath the silver moon. Enemy wolves stood motionless across the ruined sanctuary grounds, their eyes locked on the crowned female standing beside the Alpha King. No one spoke. No one moved, because the world had just witnessed something thought impossible. The Moonborn Queen had returned, and the Alpha King stood beside her. Ava could still feel the power moving through her veins. Ancient. Endless. The crown resting upon her head pulsed with silver light, while moonfire spiraled softly around her skin. Every breath she took seemed connected to the storm itself. It frightened her. Not the power. The responsibility. Kingdoms were already trembling because she existed. Armies had marched to destroy her before she even understood what she was becoming. And now, everyone was watching. Caelum stepped closer beside her, blood still running down the dark armor covering his chest and arms from the battle. The sight twisted painfully inside her. He had nearly destroyed himself protecting her. The bond pulsed warm between them instantly. His gaze lowered toward her. You're overwhelmed. Not a question. Ava swallowed quietly. A little. The corner of Caelum's mouth softened slightly. For a terrifying king born for war, he looked at her with impossible gentleness. Like she mattered beyond destiny, beyond the throne, beyond the crown itself. That feeling unsettled her more than the battle ever could. Behind them, Lucian watched silently from the shattered sanctuary entrance. Every moment between Ava and Caelum carved deeper into him, because he finally understood what true devotion looked like. Not control, not possession.
Choice.
Caelum chose Ava in every possible way, without hesitation, without fear, even against armies. The realization hollowed Lucian from the inside out. Meanwhile, across the battlefield, the southern alphas slowly began retreating. Not because they had accepted defeat, because they had witnessed the impossible. The Moonborn Queen fully awakened beside the Alpha King. And no kingdom alive was prepared for what that truly meant. Darius Vale's face hardened as he looked toward Ava. "This changes nothing," he called coldly across the ruins. Caelum's silver eyes shifted instantly. The storm darkened again. "It changes everything." The force behind his voice rolled across the battlefield hard enough to shake the broken stone beneath their feet. Several enemy wolves lowered their gaze immediately. Darius clenched his jaw. "You think the kingdoms will bow to you?"
No, Caelum replied calmly.
Lightning exploded overhead. "I think they will learn." The threat hung heavily in the air. Not arrogance.
Certainty.
Because every wolf present had just seen what the Alpha King could become when Ava was threatened. A war king beneath the moon. And that terrified them. Caelum slowly approached Ava before lowering himself onto one knee once more. "The sanctuary awaits its queen." The Moonborn Guard immediately followed. One by one. Every silver wolf kneeling beneath the moonlight. Ava stared at them in shock. "You don't have to keep doing that." Caelum lifted his gaze. "Yes," he said quietly. "We do." Because the female before them no longer carried only Moonborn blood. She carried the throne itself. Ava looked uncertainly toward Caelum. "What happens now?" The Alpha King's expression darkened slightly. "Now the kingdoms decide whether they want peace." His eyes shifted toward the retreating armies. Or extinction. The bond surged sharply between them. Ava felt his rage beneath the calm surface. Still burning. Still dangerous. For her. Always for her. And suddenly, a strange realization settled inside her chest. No matter how terrifying Caelum became to the rest of the world, he would never become terrifying to her. Because every violent thing inside him turned outward. Never toward her. The bond answered instantly. Warmth flooded through Caelum as if he had heard the thought itself. Maybe he had. The connection between them had become almost frighteningly intimate now. Caelum stepped closer slowly. Close enough that silver lightning danced softly between them beneath the moonlight. Every wolf watching immediately lowered their gaze further. Because something sacred was happening. The Alpha King looked directly into Ava's eyes. Then, to the shock of every kingdom present, Caelum Draven lowered himself onto one knee before her. Silence shattered across the battlefield. Even Lucian froze. The southern alphas stared openly in disbelief. Because kings did not kneel. Not to anyone. Yet the Alpha King bowed his head willingly before the Moonborn Queen. Ava's breath caught. "Caelum." His voice lowered softly enough that only she heard it. The first Alpha Kings forgot what it meant to stand beside their queens. The silver storm swirled violently around them. "I will not repeat their mistake." The bond ignited.
Deep.
Endless. Unbreakable. Then the Alpha King lifted his gaze toward her beneath the moonlight. And for the first time in centuries, a king knelt before his queen while the moon watched in approval above them. The moon watched them in silence. A king kneeling before his queen. A queen crowned beneath silver fire. And a world forever changed because of both. No wolf on the battlefield moved. Even the storm itself seemed suspended around them as Caelum remained on one knee before Ava, his head bowed willingly beneath the glow of the moonborn crown. The moment felt ancient.
Sacred.
Like destiny itself had finally corrected something broken centuries ago. Ava's heart thundered painfully against her ribs. No one had ever chosen her like this before. Not completely. Not publicly. Not without shame. Yet the Alpha King of the North knelt before kingdoms and armies as if the choice cost him nothing. As if she were worth everything. The bond pulsed warm between them. Deep. Steady. Unbreakable. Ava slowly lifted her trembling hand toward Caelum's face. The instant her fingers brushed his skin, silver light exploded across the battlefield. The reaction was immediate. The moonfire spiraled around them like living energy, while ancient runes ignited beneath the sanctuary ruins. Wolves across the battlefield gasped as the bond became visible for the first time. Threads of silver light connected Ava and Caelum heart to heart, soul to soul. The sacred mate bond. Complete. Enemy wolves immediately stepped backward. Several dropped to one knee instinctively, because every wolf alive could feel the truth now. The moon itself had sealed them together. Lucian stared openly at the glowing bond. Pain hollowed through his chest. Not because the rejection bond finally weakened completely, but because he understood something now that he had been too blind to see before. Ava had never wanted power, never wanted kingdoms, never wanted a throne. She only ever wanted someone to choose her. And Caelum had, without hesitation, without fear, without regret. The realization shattered what remained of Lucian's pride. Meanwhile, across the battlefield, Alpha Darius Vale's expression darkened into fury. This cannot stand. The older Alpha stepped forward as enemy warriors regrouped behind him. The Moonborn bloodline nearly destroyed wolfkind once before. Caelum finally rose slowly to his feet beside Ava. The silver bond still glowed between them beneath the stormlight. "No," Caelum said coldly. His silver eyes shifted toward Darius. "Greed destroyed wolfkind." The storm answered instantly. Lightning cracked across the mountains hard enough to shake the ruins beneath them. Darius sneered. "You think destiny gives you the right to rule?" Caelum stepped forward once. Power exploded outward from him violently. The battlefield trembled. "I do not need destiny to defeat you." Fear crossed several enemy wolves instantly, because the Alpha King was no longer restraining himself. The darkness inside him had become terrifyingly calm, controlled, precise,
Deadly.
Ava felt every emotion through the bond. The fury, the violence, the instinct to destroy every threat standing before her. Yet beneath all of it, there was still gentleness waiting only for her. The contrast nearly stole her breath. Caelum moved closer quietly. "The kingdoms will never stop hunting you now." Ava looked toward the enemy armies spread across the ruined valley below. He was right. Tonight had changed everything. There would be no returning to the girl she used to be.
No hiding. No disappearing. The world knew who she was now.
The Moonborn Queen. And beside her stood the Alpha King wolves once feared enough to betray. Ava swallowed slowly. "Then we end this." The words surprised even her. But the moment they left her mouth, the sanctuary answered. Silver flames erupted across the ruins. The crown atop her head glowed brighter, and the wolves around her lowered themselves instinctively. Not to Caelum, to her, a queen awakening fully. Caelum's gaze shifted toward her slowly. Pride flickered through the bond, not because she carried power, because she was stepping into it despite her fear. Ava finally understood something important. Queens were not born fearless. They became dangerous because the world gave them no choice. Darius Vale raised his sword toward the sanctuary. "Kill them." Enemy wolves surged forward instantly. The second battle began. Everything erupted into chaos. Silver wolves collided against southern armies while lightning consumed the battlefield overhead. Wolves shifted midair across broken stone as battle cries echoed through the valley. Lucian immediately moved beside Ava and Caelum. "More forces are coming from the west." Caelum's eyes narrowed. "They'll try to surround the sanctuary." Ava felt the strategy forming instantly through the bond. Caelum intended to hold the battlefield alone if necessary, to buy her time, to protect her at any cost.
No.
The word left her before she could stop it. Caelum looked toward her immediately. Ava stepped closer until silver fire swirled around them both. "You are not fighting this war alone." The bond flared violently. Caelum's wolf surged with fierce approval. For the first time in centuries, the Alpha King and Moonborn Queen stood together beneath the moon, and the world would soon learn why they were never meant to be separated. The battlefield burned beneath the silver moon. Lightning split the sky while wolves tore across the ruined valley below the sanctuary of Selene. Steel clashed against claws as the kingdoms fought desperately to survive the storm they had awakened. But at the center of it all, the Alpha King and Moonborn Queen stood together, unbroken. The silver bond between Ava and Caelum blazed brighter with every passing moment, visible now to every wolf across the battlefield like threads of living moonlight woven between their souls. Ancient, sacred, unbreakable. Enemy wolves hesitated every time they looked at it, because instinct remembered what history tried to erase. The Alpha King and Moonborn Queen were strongest together. And tonight, the world was remembering why. Caelum stood beside Ava with his black blade dripping enemy blood onto the shattered stone beneath them. His armor was torn from battle, silver lightning still moving violently across his skin. Yet, every few seconds, his attention returned to her, checking, protecting, certain she was still safe. Ava felt every instinct through the bond, the possessiveness, the fury, the desperate need to keep her alive at all costs. And somehow, none of it frightened her. Because even now, surrounded by war and death, Caelum's darkness never reached for her. Only around her, like she was the one thing keeping the monster inside him controlled. Another wave of enemy wolves surged toward the sanctuary. Caelum immediately shifted beside the broken gates, silver wolves charging with him into the battlefield below. Lucian fought near the eastern ruins now, blood covering his hands as he defended Moonborn warriors against southern soldiers. The irony was almost cruel. The Alpha, who once rejected Ava, now fought beside the king who loved her. Ava raised her hand instinctively as another enemy wolf lunged toward the sanctuary steps. The power answered immediately. Silver fire exploded outward. The wolf screamed as moonlight hurled him backward across the battlefield hard enough to shatter stone beneath him. Ava staggered slightly. The force inside her was becoming stronger, wilder. Ancient power surged beneath her skin like something finally waking after centuries asleep. Caelum reached for her instantly, his hand wrapped around hers, grounding her. The bond calmed immediately. Warmth replaced the chaos threatening to overwhelm her. Ava looked up at him, breathing unevenly. "I almost lost control." "No," Caelum said quietly. His thumb brushed softly across her knuckles. "You defended yourself." The gentleness in his voice nearly shattered her all over again. Because her entire life, she had been taught to make herself smaller, quieter, less threatening. Yet every time Ava used her power, Caelum looked proud of her, not afraid. The realization settled deeply into her chest. This was what it felt like to stand beside someone instead of beneath them. Suddenly, a violent roar shook the battlefield. Everyone froze. A massive crimson wolf burst through the enemy lines beneath the storm, larger than any ordinary alpha wolf alive. Its eyes glowed blood-red beneath the moonlight. Caelum's face lost all color instantly.
"No."
The creature tore through Moonborn warriors effortlessly as enemy wolves scattered away from it in terror. Ava's pulse thundered. "What is that?" Caelum's voice lowered grimly. "A bloodbound." Silence hit the sanctuary steps. The southern kingdoms used forbidden magic. Caelum's expression became lethal instantly. The crimson wolf lifted its head toward the sanctuary, toward Ava,
and smiled.
Not like an animal, like something human trapped inside a monster. The battlefield suddenly felt colder.
"Wrong."
Lucian stepped backward in horror. "They turned an alpha into that?" Caelum nodded once. "The bloodbound lose their minds completely. They only obey violence." The creature roared again before charging directly toward the sanctuary, straight toward Ava. Caelum moved instantly. The Alpha King stepped in front of her without hesitation as silver lightning exploded across the battlefield. The bond ignited violently. Protect her. Destroy everything. Ava felt the darkness inside him rising again. More dangerous than before. Because this threat was different. Not an army. Not politics. A monster sent directly for his queen. The bloodbound crashed into Caelum with enough force to shatter the sanctuary stairs beneath them. The battlefield erupted. Wolves screamed as the two massive beasts collided beneath the moonlight, claws tearing through stone while silver lightning exploded around them. Ava's breath caught painfully. Through the bond, she felt every wound, every ounce of rage, every terrifying instinct inside Caelum screaming to kill. The bloodbound bit deep into Caelum's shoulder. Ava gasped sharply as pain ripped through her chest from the connection. Caelum. The Alpha King roared violently. Then the darkness inside him finally broke free. Silver fire exploded across the battlefield. The storm above the mountains turned black, and for the first time, the world witnessed what the Alpha King truly became when something threatened the queen he loved. But Ava saw something else. Not merely rage, devotion. Every wound he endured, every enemy he destroyed, every terrifying ounce of violence inside him, he carried it for her,
to keep her safe.
The realization struck her harder than the battle itself. No one had ever protected her like this. No one had ever chosen her so fiercely. Caelum tore the bloodbound backward across the battlefield with savage force, silver lightning exploding beneath his claws. Yet even consumed by fury, his eyes kept searching for her, making sure she still stood unharmed. The bond pulsed wildly between them.
Fear, love, need.
Ava felt all of it. And suddenly, she could not bear the distance between them anymore. Before anyone could stop her, Ava crossed the shattered battlefield. Moonlight spiraled around her as wolves froze in shock watching their queen walk directly into the storm of violence surrounding the Alpha King. Ava! Caelum shouted. But she didn't stop. Caelum had just slammed the bloodbound into the ruined stone pillars when Ava reached him. Blood covered his skin. Silver fire burned across his body like living lightning. The monster roared again, then froze, because Ava reached for Caelum's face. The Alpha King instantly went still beneath her touch. The battlefield held its breath. Ava looked into his glowing silver eyes and saw the truth there. Not a king, not a weapon, a male terrified of losing her, and struck by the fierceness of his protection, by the depth of his devotion. Ava kissed him. The moment their lips met, the mate bond exploded. The moment Ava kissed Caelum, the world changed. Silver fire exploded across the battlefield with enough force to throw wolves backward through shattered stone and burning ruins. Lightning erupted from the sky in violent waves while the moon itself blazed brighter overhead. Every wolf froze. Every kingdom felt it. The mate bond had fully awakened. Not merely recognized.
Claimed.
Caelum's arms wrapped around Ava instantly, pulling her against him as the power surging between them became almost impossible to control. The kiss was not gentle. It was destiny colliding. Years of loneliness, fear, longing, protection, devotion so fierce it felt holy. Ava felt all of it pouring through the bond. And Caelum felt her choose him. Not because of prophecy, not because of kingdoms, because she wanted him. The realization nearly destroyed what remained of the restraint inside him. A deep growl rumbled from his chest as silver markings blazed brighter across his skin. The storm above the battlefield spiraled violently around them, responding to the bond as if the moon itself approved. When Ava finally pulled back slightly, breathless, Caelum rested his forehead against hers. For one impossible moment, the war disappeared. There was only her. Only him. Only the bond tying their souls together stronger than death itself. Ava looked into his glowing silver eyes and felt her heart ache painfully. No one had ever looked at her like this before. Like she was precious. Like losing her would destroy him. The bond pulsed again. And suddenly, ancient symbols ignited across the battlefield. Massive runes carved into the ruined valley floor awakened beneath the moonlight, glowing silver beneath every wolf standing there. Caelum's face lost all color. The moon's seal. Enemy wolves began stepping backward in fear. What is happening? Caelum stared at Ava and Caelum in shock. Their bond completed the ancient rite. The ground trembled violently. Then the sky cracked open. A beam of silver moonlight descended directly onto Ava and Caelum, surrounding them both in blinding light. Wolves across the battlefield immediately dropped to one knee. Even the enemy armies, because instinct demanded it. The Alpha King and Moonborn Queen had become fully united beneath the moon, and every wolf alive could feel the power of it. Lucien stood frozen near the ruined sanctuary gates. Pain hollowed through him as he watched Ava in Caelum's arms. But beneath the grief, something unexpected surfaced. Relief. Because for the first time since the rejection, Ava truly looked safe. Happy. Chosen. The realization hurt, but it also freed him. A roar suddenly shattered the moment.
The bloodbound.
The monstrous crimson wolf had survived. Wounded and enraged, it tore free from the shattered ruins beneath the storm before charging toward Ava once more.
Fast.
Violent. Murderous. Caelum turned instantly. The darkness inside him exploded again. But before he could move, Ava stepped forward. The battlefield froze. Silver fire spiraled around her body as the moonborn crown glowed brighter atop her head. Ancient runes rose into the air around her like living symbols, while moonlight gathered beneath her feet. The bloodbound lunged. Ava lifted one hand, and the world obeyed. The creature slammed into invisible force midair. Its roar turned into a scream as silver chains made entirely of moonlight wrapped violently around its body, dragging it downward into the shattered stone beneath the battlefield. Every wolf stared in horror. Ava's silver eyes glowed beneath the storm. Not frightened. Powerful. Ancient. The Moonborn Queen finally stood fully awakened. The bloodbound thrashed violently against the glowing chains. "You cannot kill what we created," one of the southern alphas shouted desperately. Ava's gaze shifted toward him slowly. The battlefield temperature dropped instantly. "You created this?" she asked quietly. The alpha hesitated. That hesitation was answer enough. Ava's expression hardened. Then the moonlight chains tightened. The bloodbound screamed one final time before its body dissolved completely into silver ash beneath the moonlight. Silence crashed across the battlefield. No one moved. No one breathed. Because the female standing before them no longer resembled the rejected Omega from Black Hollow. She looked like judgment itself. Caelum stepped beside her slowly. Pride surged fiercely through the bond. Not fear. Never fear. Only awe. His queen had just commanded ancient moonborn magic powerful enough to erase forbidden creatures from existence. And instead of being threatened by her strength, the Alpha King looked ready to worship it. Ava felt it instantly through the bond. The devotion. The hunger. The overwhelming need to stand beside her through every storm still coming. The silver bond between them glowed brighter, stronger, unbreakable. Then Caelum slowly lifted Ava's hand before every kingdom present and pressed a reverent kiss against her knuckles. The gesture shattered what remained of the enemy's courage. Because kings did not bow. Kings did not kneel. Kings did not worship. Yet the Alpha King looked at the Moonborn Queen like she was the most sacred thing in existence. And suddenly, the kingdoms understood the terrifying truth. If war came for Ava again, Caelum Draven truly would burn the world to protect her. The war had ended.
For now.
Smoke still rose from the ruined battlefield surrounding the sanctuary of Selene while wounded wolves moved quietly through the shattered valley below. Moonborn warriors gathered the fallen beneath silver torchlight as the storm slowly faded across the mountains. But peace had not come with victory. Only warning. Inside the ancient sanctuary hall, tension filled the air like another coming storm. A massive war table stood at the center of the chamber, carved from black stone and illuminated by moonlight pouring through the broken cathedral windows overhead. Maps of the kingdoms stretched across its surface beneath silver candles. Every ruler in the room understood the truth now. The world had changed, and there was no returning from it. Caelum stood at the head of the table, dark armor still stained from battle. His massive hands rested against the ancient maps, while silver fire flickered faintly beneath his skin. Beside him stood Ava, queen crowned, bond awakened, power still humming softly through the sanctuary walls in response to her presence. Yet despite the crown resting upon her head, Ava felt more human now than she had her entire life. Because for the first time, she was no longer alone. The bond between her and Caelum remained warm and steady beneath her skin. Every few moments, she could feel his attention drift toward her instinctively. Protective, certain, devoted, as though some part of him constantly checked that she still stood beside him. The feeling should have overwhelmed her. Instead, it steadied her. Caelum leaned over the war table grimly. The southern kingdoms retreated, but they will regroup quickly. One of the Moonborn generals nodded. They underestimated the Queen's awakening. They will not make that mistake twice. Lucien stood near the edge of the chamber listening silently. His expression looked older somehow. Wearier. The battle had changed him too. No one treated Ava like an unwanted Omega anymore. Now wolves lowered their heads when she entered a room. And somehow, that hurt almost as much as the rejection itself.
Because she had always deserved respect.
Even before the crown. Ava looked down at the war maps spread before them. So, what happens now? Silence followed. Then Caelum answered. Now they decide whether they want peace. His silver eyes darkened. Or extinction. The room fell silent. Not because they doubted him. Because they believed him completely. Ava felt the darkness inside him stir again through the bond. The War King. The male capable of terrifying violence when she was threatened. But she also felt the restraint. The control. Because every instinct inside Caelum that screamed to destroy kingdoms paused for her. Ava slowly placed her hand over his. The reaction was immediate. The silver fire beneath his skin calmed instantly. Several warriors in the room exchanged uneasy glances after witnessing it, because they had all seen what the Alpha King became on the battlefield. And now they watched the Moonborn Queen calm him with a single touch. Ancient balance restored. Lucien noticed it too. The terrifying perfection of them together. Caelum straightened slightly. There's another problem. The room focused on him immediately. The bloodbound was not created by ordinary wolves. A cold silence followed. Ava frowned. What do you mean? Caelum looked toward the ancient symbols carved into the sanctuary walls. There were whispers during the lunar wars. His voice lowered. About wolves who practiced forbidden magic beyond the kingdoms. Caelum's expression hardened instantly. The Shadow Court. Several older warriors visibly stiffened at the name. Ava felt unease crawl down her spine. Who are they? Caelum answered carefully. The wolves responsible for betraying the Moonborn centuries ago. The chamber darkened slightly as storm clouds passed across the moon overhead. They vanished after the fall of the first Moonborn Queen. Lucien frowned. You think they returned? Caelum's gaze shifted toward the battlefield outside. The bloodbound confirms it. Silence crashed heavily through the chamber. Because if the Shadow Court truly survived, the kingdoms were facing something far worse than war. They were facing the same darkness that destroyed the Moonborn bloodlines centuries ago. Ava felt the weight of the realization settle heavily inside her chest. This was bigger than kingdoms. Bigger than crowns. Someone had spent centuries making sure the Moonborn never rose again. And now they would come for her. Caelum stepped closer beside her immediately, sensing the shift in her emotions through the bond. They will not touch you. His voice remained calm, but the promise beneath it felt absolute. Ava looked up at him quietly. You can't fight the entire world alone. The corner of Caelum's mouth softened slightly. I won't have to. The bond pulsed warmly between them. Then he looked toward the gathered warriors around the table. Toward Caelum. Toward the Moonborn Guard. Even toward Lucien. The kingdoms forced wolves to fear one another for centuries. Lightning flashed faintly beyond the sanctuary windows. That ends now. The room went still. Caelum's silver eyes shifted toward the war map. We unite the kingdoms. Several wolves looked stunned. Under the Moonborn throne? One general asked carefully. Caelum looked toward Ava. Not ahead of her. Beside her. Together. The words settled into the chamber like destiny itself. A king. A queen. Plans written beneath moonlight while the world prepared for war. And somewhere far beyond the mountains, in the shadows no moonlight could reach, something ancient awakened at the news that the Moonborn Queen had returned. Night settled quietly over the sanctuary of Selene. For the first time since the battle, the sounds of war had faded into distant echoes beneath the mountains. Moonborn guards patrolled the ruined sanctuary walls while silver fires burned softly across the ancient halls. But sleep did not come easily to Ava. Too much had changed. Too quickly. The crown resting beside her bed still glowed faintly beneath moonlight pouring through the towering cathedral windows. Every time she looked at it, the weight of destiny settled heavier across her chest.
Queen.
The words still felt unreal. A soft knock sounded at the chamber door. Before she could answer, Caelum entered quietly. The moment he stepped into the room, the bond reacted instantly. Warmth spread through Ava's chest like moonlight against winter skin. Every fear that had kept her restless eased slightly just from his presence alone. Caelum felt it too. His silver eyes softened the instant they landed on her. "You should be resting." Ava smiled faintly. "So should you." The Alpha King still carried fresh wounds beneath the dark tunic stretched across his broad frame. Some had already healed unnaturally fast, but others remained visible reminders of the battle he nearly destroyed himself fighting for her. The sight twisted painfully inside her. Caelum noticed immediately. "The bond keeps showing you my pain." Ava lowered her gaze briefly. "I felt every wound." His expression darkened slightly. "I try to shield you from it. You can't." The truth of it settled between them quietly. Their bond had become deeper than either of them expected. Not merely emotions anymore. Sensations. Instincts. Need. And the closer they stood together, the stronger it became. Caelum slowly crossed the room toward her. Every step tightened the bond further. Ava's pulse quickened instinctively. Not fear. Awareness. The Alpha King stopped directly in front of her, close enough that moonlight caught the silver markings beneath his skin. "You should hate me for letting you walk into that battlefield." Ava frowned softly. "You were trying to protect me." "Yes." His jaw tightened. "But you are not fragile." The words surprised her, because even now, after everything, most wolves still looked at her like something delicate, something sacred that needed guarding. But Caelum looked at her like an equal. Dangerous in her own right. The realization sent warmth through the bond again. Caelum lifted his hand slowly toward her face, giving her time to pull away. Ava didn't. His fingertips brushed softly against her cheek. The bond ignited. Both of them inhaled sharply. Silver light flickered across the chamber walls as ancient runes carved into the sanctuary responded instantly to their connection. The reaction startled Ava. "It keeps getting stronger." Caelum's thumb moved gently along her skin. "Yes." The low roughness in his voice sent heat rushing through her, because now she could feel his restraint too. The effort it took for him to touch her carefully instead of pulling her completely against him. The effort it took not to drown in the bond every time she looked at him. Ava's heart thundered painfully. "You're afraid of hurting me?" Caelum went still. The silence answered her before his words did. "You are everything the kingdoms will try to destroy." His gaze darkened. "I cannot become another threat to you." The confession shattered something inside her, because even his restraint came from devotion, from care. Slowly, Ava reached for his hand resting against her face. The moment their fingers intertwined, the bond surged violently again. Moonlight exploded across the chamber. Caelum's breathing became uneven, and suddenly Ava could feel everything. His need, his protectiveness, the terrifying depth of his devotion. Every instinct inside him wrapped around her completely. Not ownership, reverence. As though he still could not fully believe she was real. Ava stepped closer instinctively. Caelum's hand tightened around hers immediately. The bond hummed almost painfully now. Every touch deepened it, strengthened it, connected them further than before. Ava looked up at him quietly. "You kneel for me in front of kingdoms." Her voice softened. "But you won't let yourself simply touch me." Caelum's expression darkened with restraint. You do not understand what you do to me. The honesty in his voice stole her breath. Ava felt his control slipping through the bond. The darkness, the hunger, the overwhelming need to hold her close and never let the world near her again. Yet he still stood perfectly still, waiting for her choice. Always her choice. And suddenly, Ava understood why the bond kept growing stronger. Because every moment with Caelum was built on trust instead of fear. Slowly, she lifted her other hand to his chest, directly above his heartbeat. The Alpha King inhaled sharply. The bond exploded. Silver light spiraled violently around the room as moonfire danced across the sanctuary walls. Ancient runes illuminated beneath their feet, while the storm outside answered their connection with distant thunder. Caelum closed his eyes briefly, as if fighting for control. Ava. She could feel it now. The truth he kept trying to hide from her. Every touch from her felt sacred to him, and every moment she chose him only deepened the bond further. Ava rose slightly onto her toes before pressing a soft kiss against the corner of his mouth. The Alpha King broke instantly. His arms wrapped around her waist with sudden fierce devotion as he pulled her fully against him. The bond surged hotter than ever before while silver lightning flashed beyond the cathedral windows. A deep growl rumbled softly from Caelum's chest. Not threatening. Possessive. Reverent. Ava buried herself closer against him without fear. And for the first time in her life, the rejected Omega who once stood alone beneath the blood moon finally understood what it felt like to be cherished completely. Ava's soft kiss against the corner of his mouth shattered the last of Caelum's restraint. The Alpha King pulled her fully against him, one arm tightening protectively around her waist while the other slid gently into her dark hair. Moonlight spilled across them through the cathedral windows as silver fire danced along the sanctuary walls. The bond pulsed wildly.
Alive.
Hungry for every touch. Caelum lowered his forehead briefly against hers, his breathing uneven now. You have no idea what you are doing to me, he murmured. But Ava could feel it. Every emotion. Every instinct, the overwhelming devotion threatening to consume him whole. And instead of frightening her, it made her step closer. Her fingers curled softly against his chest, while she looked up into his silver eyes glowing beneath the moonlight. Then Ava kissed him again, this time slower.
Certain.
The moment their lips met, the bond ignited hotter than before. Silver lightning flashed beyond the sanctuary windows while ancient runes illuminated beneath their feet. Caelum's growl vibrated softly against her mouth as his hold on her tightened instinctively, like some part of him feared she might disappear if he let go. But Ava didn't pull away. She melted closer into him instead. The Alpha King kissed her like she was sacred. Not rushed. Not careless. Every touch carried restraint wrapped around unbearable longing. His thumb brushed softly against her jaw, while the storm outside answered the growing bond between them. Ava felt herself trembling slightly beneath the intensity of it. Not fear. Emotion. Because every kiss carried things words never could. Protection.
Trust. Need.
And devotion so complete it felt written into their souls long before they were born. When they finally pulled apart, Caelum rested his forehead against hers again, his arms still wrapped securely around her. The silver bond glowing between them had become brighter now, stronger, as if the moon itself approved every moment they chose one another. And beneath the sanctuary moonlight, the Alpha King held his queen like the most precious thing he would ever possess. Moonlight poured through the sanctuary windows like silver silk. Every look. The bond had become so deep now that she could still feel him even from across the room. His heartbeat, his restraint, his constant awareness of her. And beneath all of it, love. The realization terrified her, because for so long, Ava had believed love was something fragile, conditional, something easily broken beneath cruelty and rejection. But Caelum's love felt nothing like that. It felt inevitable. Strong enough to survive kingdoms, war, and even the darkness inside him. Behind her, she heard his footsteps approach slowly, unhurried, giving her space even now. The bond warmed instantly the closer he came. Caelum stopped beside her beneath the moonlight, silver fire faintly tracing beneath his skin while shadows danced across the dark fabric stretched over his broad shoulders. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They simply stood together watching the moon. The silence between them no longer uncomfortable, only intimate, safe. Then Caelum's voice lowered quietly beside her. "You've been quiet." Ava smiled faintly. "You feel that too?" His silver eyes softened. "I feel everything when it comes to you." The confession wrapped around her heart painfully. Because she understood now. The bond was not merely magic. It was truth. There was no hiding from one another anymore.
No pretending.
No walls left standing between them. Ava turned slowly to face him. The Alpha King's attention immediately settled fully on her as though nothing else in the world existed. The intensity of it still stole her breath. Not because it frightened her, because she mattered to him that deeply. Caelum reached toward her carefully, his fingertips brushing softly along her wrist. The bond surged instantly. Warmth flooded through Ava so quickly she almost trembled beneath it. Caelum noticed. His jaw tightened slightly. "I should give you more time." Ava frowned softly. "For what?" "For this." His thumb moved gently against her skin. "For me." The vulnerability hidden beneath the words surprised her. The Alpha King feared overwhelming her. Even now, even after everything. Ava stepped closer instinctively. "You crossed kingdoms for me." The bond pulsed stronger. "You fought armies for me." Caelum's gaze darkened. "I would do far worse than that for you." A shiver moved through her. Not fear. Emotion. Because she believed him completely. Ava lifted her hand slowly to his face, brushing her fingers against the roughness of his jaw, while silver moonlight illuminated the storm-colored eyes, watching her so carefully. The moment she touched him, the bond deepened again. Ancient runes flickered softly across the chamber walls. Caelum inhaled sharply. Every touch between them strengthened the connection now, bound them closer.
Soul to soul.
Ava's voice softened almost to a whisper. "I feel everything." His gaze locked onto hers instantly. "The way you protect me." The bond pulsed. "The way you hold back parts of yourself, because you're afraid of frightening me." Caelum went perfectly still. Ava stepped closer until only inches remained between them. "And every time you look at me," her voice trembled slightly, "I feel how much you love me." The raw honesty between them nearly broke the room apart with tension. Caelum's control frayed visibly beneath the bond. Yet he still didn't pull her closer. Still waited. Still gave her the choice. Always her choice. Ava's heart ached painfully then. Because no one had ever loved her gently before. Not like this. Not while knowing she carried power capable of shaking kingdoms. Slowly, Ava rested her forehead against his. The moonlight around them brightened instantly. And then, she finally whispered the truth he had been too afraid to ask for. "I want you to know something." Caelum's arms tightened subtly around her waist. "What is it?" Ava closed her eyes briefly before looking directly into his silver gaze. "I have chosen you." The bond exploded. Silver fire spiraled violently around the chamber, while the moon above the sanctuary blazed brighter than before. Ancient runes ignited beneath their feet as the sacred connection between them deepened into something nearly eternal. Caelum stared at her like he could hardly breathe. Not because destiny chose him. Because she did. Ava watched every wall inside him break apart in that single moment. The War King. The feared Alpha King. The monster kingdoms whispered about beneath frightened breath. And yet before her, he looked undone. Caelum's hand rose into her hair, as though touching her had become instinct itself. Then he kissed her. Slowly, reverently, like her confession had become the most sacred thing he had ever been given beneath the moon. The sanctuary slept beneath silver moonlight. Beyond the towering cathedral windows, the mountains stood silent beneath the full moon while soft snow began drifting across the ruined valley below. The fires from battle had faded into distant embers. But inside the royal chamber, the bond still burned like living fire. Ava stood wrapped in Caelum's arms near the moonlit window, her heartbeat still uneven from the confession that had changed everything between them. "I have chosen you." The words continued echoing through the bond, and Caelum felt every piece of them, every ounce of trust she had placed in him, every fear she had overcome to say them aloud. The Alpha King had survived wars, kingdom betrayals, centuries of loneliness beneath a crown built from violence and duty. Yet nothing had ever undone him the way Ava choosing him willingly had. His forehead rested gently against hers, while silver moonlight wrapped around them both. "You should not look at me like that," Ava whispered softly. Caelum's brows lowered slightly. "Like what?" "Like I'm something sacred." The ache that crossed his expression nearly broke her heart. "Ava." His hand lifted slowly against her cheek. "You are." The raw honesty in his voice stole her breath completely. Because he meant it. Not because she wore a crown. Not because of destiny. Because to him, she simply was. The bond pulsed warmly between them, deeper and steadier than ever before. Every heartbeat now carried traces of one another. Ava could feel the fierce protectiveness inside him softening into something even more dangerous. Peace. The Alpha King only ever seemed truly at peace when holding her. And somehow, that realization made her love him even more. Caelum brushed his thumb gently beneath her eye, as though memorizing every part of her face. "You still doubt this?" Ava lowered her gaze slightly. "I spent my whole life being unwanted." Pain flashed violently through the bond. Not hers. His. Caelum's arms tightened around her immediately. "You were never unwanted." The force behind the words wrapped around her soul. "You are surrounded by wolves too blind to recognize what stood before them." Emotion caught painfully in her throat. Because every time Caelum spoke to her, he rebuilt pieces of her the world once tried to destroy. Ava looked back up at him slowly. "And you?" The silver fire beneath his skin flickered softly. "What about me? Did anyone ever choose you?" The question silenced the room. Caelum's gaze shifted briefly toward the moon beyond the windows. "For the crown?" His voice lowered. "Yes." His eyes returned to hers. "For myself?" A quiet sadness settled through the bond. "Never." Ava's chest ached instantly. Because beneath the power, beneath the terrifying kingdoms feared, Caelum had been alone for a very long time. She reached for his hand instinctively, intertwining their fingers. The bond surged warmly. "You have me now." The Alpha King closed his eyes briefly at the words, as if they struck somewhere dangerously deep inside him. Then he kissed her again. Slowly, tenderly. Nothing rushed, nothing stolen. Every touch between them carried reverence now. Trust. Devotion. The kind of intimacy built long before bodies ever touched. Ava melted closer into him as the moonlight around them brightened softly. Silver threads of the mate bond spiraled around their bodies like living constellations while ancient runes illuminated faintly beneath the chamber floor. The sanctuary itself responded to them, to their love. Caelum's hand rested carefully against her waist, while his lips moved against hers with impossible gentleness for a male capable of terrifying destruction. Ava could feel his restraint unraveling piece by piece through the bond. Not from lust alone, from emotion. Because every kiss from her felt like something he never truly believed he deserved. The realization shattered her all over again. Ava's fingers slid softly into his dark hair as she deepened the kiss, willingly. The Alpha King inhaled sharply against her mouth. The bond exploded hotter. Silver lightning flashed beyond the cathedral windows while moonfire spiraled across the chamber walls. The power between them had become almost alive now, responding, growing, choosing. Caelum pulled back only enough to rest his forehead against hers once more, breathing unevenly. "You undo me." The confession wrapped around her heart like moonlight. Ava smiled softly. "Good." A rough laugh escaped him quietly then, rare and warm and completely unguarded. And the sound felt more intimate than the kisses themselves. Because kings like Caelum Draven did not lower their walls easily. Yet with her,
He did it constantly.
willingly. Ava touched his face gently beneath the moonlight. I don't want a throne if I have to stand on it alone. Caelum's expression softened instantly. You never will. The certainty in his voice shook the bond itself. Not promise.
Truth.
Then the Alpha King lowered himself slowly before her once more. Ava's breath caught. Caelum. But he only took her hand carefully between both of his. Silver eyes locked completely onto hers beneath the moonlight. And with the entire world asleep beyond the sanctuary walls, the Alpha King bowed before the woman he loved. Not out of duty. Not because prophecy demanded it, but because his soul had already recognized hers as home forever. The moon hung high above the sanctuary of Selene. Cold silver light spilled across the ancient kingdom, while distant winds moved softly through the ruined towers beyond the cathedral walls. The world felt suspended in quiet for one fragile night before war returned again. But inside the royal chamber, the bond burned hotter than ever. Ava stood before the moonlit windows, unable to still the emotions moving through her chest. The Shadow Court had returned. The kingdoms were dividing. Another war was coming, and deep within the bond, she could feel what Caelum tried so desperately to hide from her.
Fear.
Not for himself, for her. The realization haunted her, because the Alpha King feared almost nothing. Yet every thought of losing her unraveled him completely. Behind her, the chamber doors opened quietly. The bond instantly awakened. Warmth flooded through Ava before she even turned around. Caelum. He stepped into the room dressed in dark battle leathers instead of armor tonight, silver fire faintly tracing beneath his skin while moonlight illuminated the hard lines of his face. Beautiful, dangerous, and exhausted beneath the weight of protecting kingdoms that still feared him. The moment his eyes found her, the tension inside him softened. Always for her. Caelum crossed the room slowly until he stood directly behind her, close enough that she felt his warmth surrounding her instantly. Neither spoke at first. The silence between them had become its own language now. The bond carried everything words could not. Then Caelum's hand slid carefully around her waist. The touch sent silver light flickering across the chamber. You should be sleeping, he murmured quietly. Ava leaned back, slightly against him. So should you. A low hum vibrated softly through his chest. I do not sleep well when war approaches. Pain moved through the bond instantly. Old memories, battles,
Loss.
loneliness stretching across centuries beneath a crown he never truly wanted. Ava turned slowly within his arms until she faced him completely. Moonlight wrapped around them both. You think you're going to lose me? The words silenced him instantly. Caelum's jaw tightened. The bond had made hiding from her impossible now. Ava lifted her hand gently against his face. You don't have to carry that fear alone. His silver eyes closed briefly beneath her touch. And when he opened them again, she saw something raw there. Something vulnerable no kingdom had likely ever witnessed from their feared Alpha King. I have spent my entire life losing everything I cared about. The confession shattered her heart quietly. Kingdoms. His hand tightened slightly at her waist. Family. The bond darkened painfully.
Peace.
Then his gaze locked fully onto hers beneath the moonlight. But losing you, his voice roughened, would destroy what remains of me. Emotion caught sharply in Ava's chest, because no one had ever needed her this deeply before. Not for power, not for destiny, for love. The bond pulsed fiercely between them. Ava stepped closer until their bodies fully touched, her fingers sliding softly into his dark hair, while silver moonlight spiraled around them. Then she whispered the words that changed everything. Then mark me. Caelum froze completely. Even the bond went still. Ava's heart thundered, but she didn't look away. Before the battle comes. The Alpha King stared at her as if he could barely breathe. Ava, I want the world to know I belong beside you. The bond exploded with emotion.
Need.
Devotion. Reverence, so fierce it nearly stole the air from the room. Ava felt every ounce of it crash through him at once. Caelum's hands tightened carefully against her waist like he was struggling to hold himself together. "You do not understand what you're asking." His voice had become rough now, dangerously low. Ava stepped even closer.
Ida.
The moonlight around them brightened instantly. The bond already chose us. Her fingers brushed softly along his jaw. "But I want to choose you completely too." The Alpha King looked utterly undone. Not because she offered herself. Because she trusted him enough to. Caelum lowered his forehead against hers, breathing unevenly. "A mating mark is forever." Ava smiled softly. "So are we." The words shattered the last of his restraint. Caelum kissed her fiercely. Not violent, not consuming, devotional, like he was pouring every unspoken emotion into her mouth beneath the moonlight. Ava melted into him instantly, the bond igniting hotter than ever before while silver lightning flashed across the sky outside the sanctuary windows. Ancient runes illuminated beneath their feet. The sanctuary itself recognized what was about to happen. Caelum's lips moved slowly from her mouth to her jaw, then lower, every touch reverent, every kiss worship. Ava's breath caught as his hand slid carefully against her back, holding her close while the Alpha King buried himself in the warmth and trust she offered him so freely. The bond pulsed almost painfully now.
Destiny. Love.
Soul recognizing soul. Caelum paused near the curve of her neck, his breathing uneven, his control hanging by threads. "Ava." The warning in his voice only made her hold him tighter. "I'm yours." The words broke him completely. A deep growl rumbled from his chest as silver fire exploded across the chamber walls. Then, beneath the moonlight, the Alpha King prepared to mark his queen before the war that threatened to tear the world apart. Moonlight flooded the sanctuary chamber in silver waves. The ancient walls glowed softly beneath the power building between Ava and Caelum, while distant thunder rolled across the mountains beyond the cathedral windows. Everything around them seemed alive. The sanctuary, the moon, the bond. All of it recognized what was about to happen. Caelum stood motionless against Ava, his forehead resting against hers while every ounce of control inside him hung by fragile threads. She could feel it all through the bond, the restraint, the devotion, the overwhelming need to claim her completely while still giving her every chance to pull away. But Ava never stepped back. Not from him, not from this, because for the first time in her life, she was exactly where she wanted to be. The Alpha King's hands moved carefully along her waist as though touching her remained something sacred to him. Every brush of his fingertips sent warmth spiraling through the bond until it became almost impossible to separate where she ended and he began. Their souls already knew one another completely. Now their hearts and bodies followed. Ava. Her name left him like prayer beneath the moonlight. She lifted her gaze to his silver eyes glowing in the dark. "I'm not afraid." The confession shattered something inside him. Because she trusted him completely. The male the kingdoms feared most. The war king capable of burning nations to ash. And yet in her arms, Caelum felt gentler than he ever had before. His lips found hers again slowly, reverently. The kiss deepened with unbearable tenderness, while silver light spiraled around their bodies like living constellations. Ancient runes illuminated beneath the sanctuary floor, responding to the sacred joining of king and queen. Ava melted into him fully, her hands sliding against the broad strength of his shoulders, while the bond pulsed hotter and deeper with every touch. She felt his heartbeat become hers, his breathing, his emotions. Every part of him opened completely to her now. Nothing hidden, nothing restrained, only truth. Caelum kissed her like forever had already begun. Not rushed, not consuming. Every touch worshipped her. Every movement asked instead of demanded. And that devotion unraveled Ava completely. The rejected Omega who once stood unwanted beneath the blood moon disappeared entirely in his arms. Here, she was loved, chosen, treasured. Caelum's mouth moved softly along her jaw before lowering to the curve of her neck once more. A deep growl vibrated through his chest as the mate bond surged violently beneath the moonlight. The marking bond had awakened fully. Ava felt it immediately. The instinct, the need, the sacred promise wolves carried older than kingdoms themselves. Mark me. The thought moved through the bond willingly this time. Not fear, not submission.
Choice.
Caelum stilled instantly against her neck, his breathing rough. You are certain? Ava pulled back just enough to look at him. Moonlight illuminated the emotion written openly across his face now. Love so fierce it almost hurt to witness. I have never been more certain of anything. The Alpha King closed his eyes briefly, as if the words themselves nearly undid him. Then his hand slid gently into her hair, while the other remained firm against her waist, holding her impossibly close. The bond ignited. Silver lightning cracked across the sky outside the sanctuary. And beneath the moonlight, Caelum marked her. Ava gasped softly as the bond exploded through her entire body like silver fire. Warmth flooded every part of her soul while ancient magic wrapped around them both, sealing them together completely. The sanctuary erupted with light. Runes blazed across the walls. Moonfire spiraled around the chamber, and the sacred mark glowing against Ava's skin illuminated like a promise written by the moon itself. Forever. Caelum held her tightly against him as the bond deepened into something eternal. No longer merely mates. No longer only king and queen. Now, they belonged to one another completely. Ava felt tears burn unexpectedly in her eyes as the connection settled fully into place. Not pain. Relief.
Peace.
Home. Caelum immediately sensed it through the bond. His hand rose gently against her face, while his forehead rested against hers once more. You're crying. A soft laugh escaped her shakily. I'm happy. The words nearly destroyed him. Ava felt it through the bond instantly. The overwhelming tenderness moving through the Alpha King as he looked at her now. Not triumph. Gratitude. As though she had given him something priceless simply by loving him back. Caelum kissed her again softly beneath the moonlight, while silver threads of the mate bond wrapped around their bodies like sacred vows. Their souls recognized forever in one another. Their hearts chose it freely. And beneath the ancient moon, the Alpha King and his queen gave themselves completely to the promise of always. The sanctuary belonged to moonlight. Silver poured through the towering cathedral windows, illuminating the ancient chamber where the Alpha King held his queen against him while the fresh, mating mark glowed softly upon Ava's skin. The bond between them had become something beyond words now. Ancient. Endless.
Alive.
Every heartbeat echoed through both of them. Every breath shared. Ava could still feel the warmth of the mark spreading gently through her body while Caelum's arms remained wrapped securely around her, as though letting her go had become impossible. Not because he wished to possess her, because loving her had become part of his soul. The Alpha King lowered his forehead against hers, breathing unevenly as silver fire flickered beneath his skin. You are truly mine now. The words carried reverence instead of ownership. Ava smiled softly beneath the moonlight. And you are mine. The bond surged violently at the confession. Caelum kissed her immediately.
Deep. Slow.
Devotional. The kind of kiss that carried promises instead of hunger alone. Ava melted fully into him, her hands sliding against the broad strength of his chest, while moonlight spiraled around them like living stars. Everything between them felt sacred now. Every touch deepened the bond. Every kiss drew their souls closer together. The Alpha King moved like a male terrified of breaking something precious despite the overwhelming power he carried inside him. And Ava loved him more for it, because beneath the feared king stood a male who touched her with tenderness instead of control. Caelum's hand slid gently along her back while his lips moved against hers with growing emotion. The restraint between them slowly unraveled. Not rushed. Not desperate. Natural. Like their souls had already known this moment long before they were born. Ava felt every emotion inside him through the bond.
Love. Need.
Wonder. And beneath all of it, gratitude that she had chosen him freely. The realization nearly shattered her heart again. Ava pulled back only enough to look into his silver eyes glowing beneath the moonlight. You still can't believe this is real. Caelum's hand rose softly against her cheek. I spent centuries believing the moon had abandoned my bloodline. His gaze darkened with emotion. Then you appeared. Ava kissed him again before he could hide behind the sadness. The bond exploded warmly around them. Caelum's arms tightened instinctively as he lifted her effortlessly into his embrace, carrying her toward the moonlit bed resting beside the cathedral windows. Not dominance.
Care.
Every movement between them remained built from trust. The Alpha King laid her gently against the silver sheets before settling beside her beneath the moonlight, his gaze never leaving hers. Ava had never felt more seen in her entire life. Not as an Omega. Not as a queen. As herself. Caelum brushed his fingers softly through her dark curls while silence wrapped warmly around them. No fear remained between them now. Only love. The bond pulsed steadily as their bodies moved closer together beneath the silver glow surrounding the room. Every kiss deepened. Every touch lingered. Their souls had already joined long ago through destiny and devotion. Now their hearts and bodies followed willingly behind. Moonlight danced across their skin while ancient runes glowed softly beneath the sanctuary floor in blessing. Outside, the storm finally quieted completely, as if even the world itself recognized the sacredness of the moment unfolding within the chamber. Ava buried her fingers into Caelum's dark hair while he kissed her with growing reverence and emotion, holding her as though she were the most precious thing he had ever known. And perhaps she was. Because for the first time in centuries, the Alpha King no longer stood alone beneath the moon. The mating bond wrapped around them completely as they gave themselves to one another without fear or restraint, their connection becoming deeper than destiny itself. Not merely passion. Not merely desire.
Love.
Pure and unwavering. A promise freely given beneath the moonlight. And as the sanctuary glowed softly around them, the Alpha King and his queen became one in soul, heart, and body while the moon watched over them in silent approval. Moonlight wrapped around them like a blessing. The sanctuary chamber glowed beneath silver fire, while ancient runes shimmered softly across the cathedral walls, responding to the completed mate bond between the Alpha King and his queen. Ava rested against Caelum's chest beneath the moonlit sheets, her fingers tracing slowly across the dark markings along his skin while the fresh, mating mark at her neck pulsed warmly with every beat of his heart. The bond between them had settled into something deeper now.
Steady. Sacred. Complete.
For the first time in centuries, the Alpha King was no longer alone beneath the moon. Caelum held her carefully against him, his hand moving slowly through her dark curls while silence settled comfortably around them. Not empty silence.
Peace.
The kind neither of them had known before finding one another. Ava tilted her head slightly to look up at him beneath the silver light spilling through the cathedral windows. You're staring again. The corner of Caelum's mouth softened. I waited too long to find you. Emotion moved painfully through the bond. Not sorrow. Wonder. As though some part of him still feared waking from this moment and finding it gone. Ava brushed her fingers softly against his jaw. You found me. His eyes closed briefly beneath her touch. No, he murmured quietly. The moon returned you to me. The words wrapped around her heart with unbearable tenderness. Caelum looked at her like fate itself had finally shown mercy after centuries of war and loneliness. And perhaps it had. Outside the sanctuary walls, snow continued falling softly across the ruined mountains while distant moonlight turned the world silver and still. But inside the chamber, the bond remained alive between them. Every touch carried emotion now. Adoration.
Trust. Desire.
Devotion so complete it felt written into their souls across lifetimes. Caelum's reverence for Ava undid him. Not merely because she was beautiful, though she was. Moonlight seemed made for her skin, but because she had looked at the darkest parts of him, and stayed. The Alpha King lowered his lips softly against her forehead before pulling her closer into his arms again. Ava melted against him instinctively. The bond purred warmly between them. You calm the storm inside me, Caelum admitted quietly. Ava smiled faintly against his chest. You are the storm. A rough laugh escaped him softly. Only because the world forced me to become one. The truth of it hurt her, because kingdoms feared the monster Caelum could become, while ignoring all the reasons he was created in the first place. Ava lifted herself slightly, her fingers brushing gently through his dark hair as she looked down at him beneath the moonlight. You are not what they made you. Caelum's silver eyes locked onto hers completely. And what am I to you? The bond tightened warmly around them. Ava smiled softly. Home. The Alpha King went perfectly still. Then emotion crashed through the bond so fiercely it stole her breath.
Love.
Pure and overwhelming. Caelum kissed her immediately.
Slowly.
Deeply. Like the word itself had shattered every remaining wall inside him. The sanctuary answered them again. Silver light spiraled around the room while ancient runes illuminated brighter beneath the floor. Outside, the moon emerged fully from behind the clouds as if the night itself wished to witness them together. Ava's fingers tangled into his hair while Caelum held her impossibly close, his kisses carrying promises no throne or prophecy ever could. You are loved. You are chosen. You are mine, and I am yours. Forever. When they finally pulled apart, Caelum rested his forehead against hers once more while their breathing slowly steadied together. The mating mark against Ava's skin glowed softly beneath the moonlight. A sacred vow. Freely given. Caelum brushed his thumb gently across her cheek. No matter what war comes next, the bond tightened protectively. Nothing in this world will separate us again. Ava believed him completely. Not because he was the Alpha King. Because his soul had already intertwined with hers beyond undoing. And beneath the silent moon, the sanctuary bore witness to two souls who had finally found forever in one another. Dawn arrived slowly over the sanctuary of Selene. Silver light spilled across the mountains while soft snow continued falling beyond the cathedral windows, covering the scars of battle beneath quiet beauty. Inside the royal chamber, peace lingered. Ava rested against Caelum beneath tangled silver blankets, her head rising and falling softly with his breathing while the completed mating bond glowed warmly between them. The world beyond the sanctuary still carried war, still carried danger. But for one fragile morning, there was only this. The Alpha King's arms wrapped securely around his queen while moonlight and dawn intertwined across their skin like heaven itself had blessed their union. Ava stirred first. The bond awakened instantly. Warmth flowed through her chest the moment she felt Caelum beside her, steady and real beneath her fingertips. Not a dream. Not loneliness. Him. She tilted her head slightly to look up at him. Even asleep, the Alpha King looked powerful enough to shake kingdoms apart. Dark hair spilled across the pillows while silver markings rested faintly beneath his skin, glowing softly in response to her closeness. But now she saw the quieter parts of him too, the exhaustion he carried, the loneliness hidden beneath centuries of leadership and war. And somehow, the male feared by the world looked most peaceful when holding her. Ava's fingers brushed gently against his chest. The reaction was immediate. Caelum's eyes opened instantly. Silver. Focused. Then softening the second, he realized she was safe in his arms. The bond flooded warmly between them. Good morning, Ava whispered. A rough smile touched his mouth. I think that may be the first peaceful morning I have known in years. The honesty in his voice wrapped around her heart. Caelum shifted slightly, pulling her closer until she rested fully against him once more. His hand moved slowly along her back while he buried his face briefly into her hair. Ava smiled softly. You're clingy for a king. A low laugh rumbled from his chest. You marked me too, remember? The bond pulsed playfully between them. Ava felt warmth rise instantly beneath his gaze. Because now every emotion between them moved freely. Nothing hidden. Nothing restrained. Caelum lifted his hand gently beneath her chin, his silver eyes studying her like he still could not believe she existed. The mark suits you. Ava felt the sacred symbol glowing softly against her neck. And yours? Caelum lowered his gaze briefly toward the matching mark resting against his own skin. The Alpha King looked almost reverent, as if my soul finally stopped wandering. Emotion tightened painfully in Ava's chest. No one had ever spoken about loving her like this before. Not as destiny, not as obligation, as salvation. Ava kissed him softly before the ache inside her could overwhelm her. The bond ignited instantly, warm and endless. Caelum deepened the kiss slowly, one hand sliding into her dark curls while morning light flooded around them. Every touch still carried wonder, as though neither of them had fully recovered from finding the other. When they finally pulled apart, Caelum rested his forehead against hers. You should stay here today. Ava smiled faintly. The kingdoms are preparing for war. Let them wait. The fierce protectiveness in his voice made her laugh softly. Caelum's expression remained serious. I would keep you hidden from every danger in this world if I could. Ava brushed her fingers gently across his jaw. But you won't. The Alpha King exhaled quietly.
No.
Because he understood her now. Ava was not made to hide. She was made to stand beside him, equal beneath the moon. The bond pulsed proudly between them at the realization. Suddenly, a sharp pulse of magic rippled through the sanctuary walls. Both of them froze instantly. The warmth in the room vanished beneath sudden tension. Caelum sat upright immediately, instincts turning lethal in seconds while silver fire flashed beneath his skin. Ava felt it too. Something ancient,
Dark.
watching. The sanctuary runes began glowing violently across the walls. Then Caelan's voice thundered beyond the chamber doors. My king. Caelum rose from the bed instantly. The War King returned in a heartbeat. But before he could move away, Ava caught his wrist gently. The Alpha King looked back toward her. Fear moved through the bond. Not fear for themselves. For what waited outside. Ava stepped toward him slowly before pressing her forehead briefly against his. Whatever comes next, the bond tightened fiercely. We face it together. Caelum's hand rose softly against her cheek. Always. The word moved silently through the bond between them. Then, together, the Alpha King and his queen walked toward the next storm waiting beyond the sanctuary doors. The sanctuary no longer felt peaceful. Not after the pulse of dark magic that shook the ancient walls before dawn. The warmth of the morning Ava shared with Caelum vanished the moment they stepped beyond the royal chamber doors. Moonborn warriors filled the cathedral halls now, silver armor gleaming beneath torchlight while tension spread heavily through the sanctuary like smoke before fire. Something was coming, and every wolf inside the mountain fortress felt it. Caelum waited near the center of the great hall beside the ancient war table, his expression darker than Ava had ever seen it before. The moment Caelum entered the chamber, every warrior straightened instinctively. The Alpha King's presence shifted the air itself. Cold, controlled, dangerous. Yet his hand never left Ava's. Not even now. The bond between them remained alive beneath the surface, steady and protective while silver threads of moonlight occasionally flickered around the sacred marks on their skin. A visible reminder to every wolf present. The king and queen were fully bound. Caelum bowed his head slightly. My king. My queen. Caelum's gaze sharpened immediately. What happened? Caelum looked toward the ancient sanctuary windows where storm clouds gathered unnaturally fast beyond the mountains. We lost contact with the northern watchtowers before sunrise. Silence spread through the hall. Ava felt the shift in the bond instantly. Caelum's instincts sharpened into lethal focus. Attack. Caelum hesitated. That's the problem. His silver eyes darkened. There were no survivors. The words chilled the chamber instantly. Moonborn warriors exchanged uneasy glances. Because northern watchtowers were heavily guarded, entire elite wolf units protected those mountain borders. For them to disappear without warning, something unnatural had reached the kingdom. Ava felt cold settle beneath her skin. The Shadow Court. Caelum nodded grimly. We found this at the last tower. One of the guards stepped forward carefully, carrying a blackened banner wrapped in silver chains. The moment the cloth unfurled, the sanctuary lights dimmed. A strange symbol marked the center of the banner. A silver moon split apart by darkness. Ava's chest tightened painfully. The symbol felt wrong, ancient, corrupted. Caelum's expression became terrifyingly still. The court has declared war. A low murmur spread through the warriors gathered around the hall.
Fear.
Not of kingdoms. Of history repeating itself. Caelum looked toward Ava carefully. The same symbol appeared before the first Moonborn Queen was betrayed. The room fell silent. Ava's fingers tightened unconsciously around Caelum's hand. The Alpha King immediately stepped closer beside her. Protective instinct radiated through the bond instantly. No fear reached her alone anymore. Caelum carried it with her. Ava stared at the broken moon symbol. "They're coming for me." "No," Caelum said quietly. His silver eyes darkened toward the banner. "They're coming for us." The distinction mattered, because the Alpha King no longer separated himself from her fate. Their souls, their kingdom, their war, everything belonged to both of them now. Caelum moved toward the ancient war map spread across the stone table. If the Shadow Court controls the northern borders, then they'll force the southern kingdoms to unite against us before winter ends. Another commander stepped forward nervously. And if the human territories learn wolves are preparing for war, they will panic, Caelum finished grimly. Ava looked across the room filled with hardened warriors and ancient wolves. For the first time, she realized the true weight of the throne she carried. This war would not destroy only kingdoms. It could destroy the entire hidden world wolves spent centuries protecting. The thought settled heavily inside her chest. Caelum felt it immediately. He turned toward her fully despite the room watching. "You are not carrying this alone." The fierce certainty in his voice steadied her instantly. The bond warmed, anchored. Ava looked into his silver eyes and realized something terrifyingly beautiful. No matter how dark the war became, she would never face it alone again.
Suddenly,
the sanctuary trembled violently. Every torch extinguished at once. Darkness swallowed the hall. Then a voice echoed through the chamber. Cold, ancient, inhuman. "The Moonborn Queen has awakened." Ava froze. The voice did not come from the room. It came from everywhere. The walls, the shadows, the darkness itself. Moonborn warriors immediately drew weapons as black smoke curled through the sanctuary floor. Caelum stepped directly in front of Ava without hesitation. Silver fire exploded beneath his skin. "Show yourself." The voice laughed softly. A sound completely without mercy. "The Alpha King still kneels for love." The shadows thickened, and history prepares to punish him for it. A figure slowly emerged from the darkness at the far end of the hall.
Tall.
Draped in black robes woven with silver runes. Its face hidden beneath shadow, but its eyes glowed the same silver as the moon. Ava's pulse thundered, because through the bond, she felt Caelum's sudden fury. Not fear. Recognition. The Alpha King's voice lowered into something deadly calm. "You should have remained buried with the old wars." The figure smiled beneath the darkness. "We tried to kill the Moonborn bloodline once before." Its glowing eyes shifted slowly toward Ava. "This time, the sanctuary walls cracked violently. We will finish what we started." The sanctuary exploded into chaos. Moonborn warriors surged forward instantly as black shadows spread across the cathedral floor beneath the cloaked figure standing at the far end of the hall. Ancient runes cracked violently along the walls while silver fire erupted from the torches overhead. But the stranger never moved. He simply stood within the darkness, smiling. Caelum stepped fully in front of Ava without hesitation. The Alpha King's power flooded the sanctuary instantly, suffocating and absolute. Silver lightning spiraled beneath his skin while the ancient bond between king and queen ignited protectively around them both. Every instinct inside him roared the same command. Protect her. Destroy everything else. Ava felt it through the bond immediately. The terrifying violence waiting beneath Caelum's calm exterior. Yet beneath the fury, she also felt something unexpected: recognition. The figure before them mattered. The cloaked stranger tilted his head slightly. You still stand between her and danger. Caelum's silver eyes glowed like moonfire. I always will. The darkness around the figure rippled softly. How tragic. His voice echoed unnaturally through the sanctuary. The last Alpha King still believes love can save this world. A low growl rumbled from Caelum's chest. The sound shook the hall itself. You speak too freely for someone standing inside my kingdom. The figure laughed quietly. Kingdom? Black smoke spiraled around him violently. There will be no kingdoms left when the Shadow Court rises again. Several warriors stiffened visibly. Even Caelan's expression darkened further. The court had returned openly now. Not hidden. Not whispered about. War was no longer approaching. It had arrived. Ava stepped slightly beside Caelum, despite the dangerous tension filling the sanctuary. Why are you hunting the Moonborn bloodline? The figure's silver eyes shifted toward her instantly beneath the hood. And for the first time, the darkness reacted. Violently. The shadows around him writhed as though alive beneath her gaze. Because your blood should never have survived. The hatred in his voice sent cold through the sanctuary. Ava felt ancient pain move through the bond instantly. Not hers. Caelum's. The Alpha King already knew the answer. The figure slowly lifted one gloved hand toward Ava. The first Moonborn Queen nearly destroyed the Shadow Court. Black smoke curled through the air. You were meant to die with her. Caelum moved before the final word finished echoing. Silver lightning exploded across the sanctuary. The Alpha King crossed the hall in a blur of violence, black blade materializing instantly in his hand as he slammed the stranger backward through ancient stone pillars hard enough to shake the mountain itself. The sanctuary erupted. Moonborn warriors drew weapons as shadows exploded outward from the cloaked figure, colliding violently against Caelum's silver fire. The darkness screamed. Not metaphorically. Actually screamed. Ava staggered from the sound. The figure rose slowly from the shattered stone beneath the storm of power now raging across the hall. Then he smiled. You really do love her. Caelum's expression became terrifying. The sanctuary temperature dropped instantly beneath the Alpha King's fury. If you speak about her again, silver fire exploded violently around him. I will tear your soul apart. The threat was not empty. Every wolf in the room knew it. The figure studied Caelum silently for a moment before looking back toward Ava. Then something changed in his expression. Interest. You bonded completely. His gaze lowered toward the glowing mating mark at Ava's neck. How unfortunate. Caelum stepped protectively closer. What does that mean? The figure's silver eyes gleamed beneath the hood. It means when she dies. The sanctuary froze. The Alpha King dies with her. Silence shattered across the room. Ava's breath caught painfully. The bond. Complete mate bonds tied souls together beyond death itself. If one died, the other rarely survived long after. Caelum never looked away from the cloaked figure. Not even once. As if the possibility had already become irrelevant to him. Because if Ava died, there was no future he wanted afterward anyway. Ava felt the horrifying truth of that through the bond instantly.
Deep.
Absolute. The realization nearly broke her. The stranger smiled again, as though he sensed her fear. Yes, he murmured softly. You feel it now. Darkness spread farther across the sanctuary floor. The Alpha King belongs to you completely. Ava's chest tightened painfully. Not because the bond frightened her. Because of how willingly Caelum had given himself to it. To her. The cloaked figure slowly stepped backward into the shadows. The court will come for the queen soon. Silver eyes locked onto Ava one final time. And when we do, the darkness swallowed him completely. We will make the king watch. The sanctuary exploded with silver fire as Caelum attacked the shadows instantly. Too late. The figure vanished. Silence crashed heavily through the ruined hall afterward. No one moved. No one spoke. The storm outside raged violently now, shaking the cathedral windows while black clouds swallowed the moon. Ava stood frozen beside the war table. The Alpha King would die if she did. The truth echoed mercilessly through her mind. Then suddenly, Caelum was in front of her again. His hands cupped her face instantly. His silver eyes searched hers fiercely. Ava. The bond pulsed desperately between them.
Fear.
Not for himself. Only for her. Ava's voice shook slightly. If something happens to me.
No.
The force behind the word silenced the entire sanctuary. Caelum lowered his forehead against hers. You are not dying. The Alpha King's voice roughened dangerously. I refuse to fear kingdoms for you. Silver fire flickered beneath his skin again. And I will not fear darkness either. The bond surged violently between them, because the terrifying truth remained unchanged. The Alpha King loved his queen enough to follow her even into death itself. The sanctuary had not slept. Storms battered the mountains through the night, while Moonborn warriors reinforced ancient defenses across the fortress. Torches burned endlessly through the cathedral halls as whispers of the Shadow Court spread fear through even the oldest wolves. War had returned to the kingdoms, and, this time, it hunted the queen directly. Ava stood alone near the sanctuary balcony, overlooking the frozen valley below. Snow swirled violently beneath dark skies, while silver banners snapped sharply in the wind. Everything had changed so quickly. Only weeks ago, she had been an unwanted Omega hiding from rejection. Now kingdoms prepared for war because she existed. The weight of it pressed heavily against her chest. Through the bond, she felt Caelum approaching before hearing him. Warmth.
Strength.
Home. The Alpha King stepped onto the balcony moments later, dark armor already covering his body while silver lightning flickered faintly beneath his skin. Battle armor. Ava's stomach tightened immediately. Caelum noticed. They found movement near the eastern mountains. The bond carried his frustration clearly.
Scouts.
Enemies. Threats multiplying around the sanctuary. Ava turned toward him slowly. You're leaving. His jaw tightened slightly. Only for the day. But the bond betrayed the truth. Danger waited beyond those mountains. Real danger. Caelum stepped closer instantly, his hands settling carefully at her waist while cold wind spiraled around them. You should remain inside the sanctuary. Ava's expression softened sadly. There it is again. Caelum frowned slightly.
What?
You trying to protect me from everything. The Alpha King's gaze darkened fiercely. That is my responsibility.
No.
Ava's voice remained calm. It's your instinct. The distinction silenced him. Because she was right. Protecting her had become something deeper than duty now. It was woven directly into his soul. Caelum touched the glowing mating mark against her neck carefully. And if your instincts placed you in danger? Ava stepped closer beneath the stormlight. Then we face it together. The words struck him deeply through the bond. But fear still remained beneath his calm exterior. Not fear of battle. Fear of losing her. Ava reached for his hand slowly. You cannot lock me away every time darkness appears. Silver fire flickered softly beneath his skin. I would if it kept you alive. The brutal honesty in the confession shattered her heart quietly. Ava lifted her hand against his face. And if hiding destroys who I am? The Alpha King went still. Because he understood now. Ava had spent her entire life making herself smaller to survive. Quieter, hidden, unseen. He would never force her back into that existence again, even to protect her. The realization moved painfully through the bond. Caelum lowered his forehead briefly against hers. You ask impossible things of me. Ava smiled sadly.
No.
Her fingers intertwined softly with his. I ask you to stand beside me instead of in front of me. Silence stretched between them beneath the storm. Then slowly, the Alpha King nodded once. Not because he liked it. Because he respected her enough to listen. The bond warmed instantly. Ava felt his reluctant surrender ripple through their souls. And somehow, that trust meant more than protection ever could. Suddenly the sanctuary horns echoed violently through the mountains. Both of them turned instantly. Moonborn warriors rushed across the fortress walls below, while silver fires ignited along the ancient towers. Caelum's entire body sharpened into lethal focus. What happened? A guard burst onto the balcony breathless. My king. His face had lost all color. The Eastern scouts returned. The bond twisted painfully. Something was wrong. The guard swallowed hard. They found an entire village destroyed beyond the northern pass. Silence crashed across the balcony. Ava felt horror move through the bond instantly. Caelum's fury answered seconds later. Survivors? The guard's expression darkened. One. The storm above the sanctuary raged harder. And she keeps asking for the Moonborn Queen. Ava's pulse thundered. Caelum immediately stepped in front of her again instinctively.
No.
The refusal came before she even spoke. Ava stared at him. You haven't heard what she wants. I do not care. His silver eyes burned fiercely now. It could be a trap. It probably is. Caelum froze. Ava stepped closer toward him. But innocent wolves are dying while we hide inside these walls. The Alpha King's jaw tightened dangerously. The bond trembled between them, because part of him already knew she was right. Ava touched his hand gently. The shadow court wants me frightened. Silver fire moved violently beneath his skin. They want me hidden. The truth settled heavily between them. Ava lifted her chin slightly beneath the stormlight. I refuse to become afraid of my own kingdom. Emotion crashed through the bond instantly.
Pride. Fear.
Love so overwhelming it nearly hurt. Caelum stared at her silently for several long moments. Then finally, the Alpha King bowed his head once. Not surrender. Respect. The Queen had spoken. And the female standing before him was no longer the rejected Omega Kingdoms once ignored. She was becoming something far more dangerous. A queen who refused to hide from darkness. The village smelled like death. Smoke still drifted through the frozen ruins as Moonborn warriors moved cautiously between collapsed homes and scorched earth beneath the gray morning sky. Nothing remained untouched. The Shadow Court had not merely attacked. They had erased. Ava stood beside Caelum at the edge of the ruined village, her cloak whipping violently in the cold wind while horror settled heavily in her chest. Families, children, entire bloodlines gone. The destruction stretched across the valley, like a wound carved directly into the kingdom. And beneath it all, dark magic lingered. She could feel it, the same corrupted power that filled the sanctuary when the cloaked figure appeared. The bond tightened instantly. Caelum sensed her distress immediately. You should not have come. Ava's gaze moved across the ashes slowly. And leave my people to suffer alone? The Alpha King's jaw tightened. The words still affected him. My people. Because Ava had accepted the throne fully now. Not because she desired power. Because she refused to abandon wolves who needed their queen. Caelum stepped closer behind her instinctively, his hand settling protectively against the small of her back while silver fire flickered beneath his skin. Moonborn warriors parted respectfully as the king and queen moved deeper into the village ruins together. Silence followed them.
No birds. No wolves.
Nothing alive except the wind. Then Ava saw the bodies. Her breath caught sharply. Dozens of wolves lay across the snow-covered streets beneath blackened ash. Some still clutched weapons. Others had clearly tried protecting their families until the very end. Ava felt grief crash violently through the bond. Caelum's fury answered immediately. The Alpha King's power darkened the air around them. Every instinct inside him demanded blood for this. Caelum approached quietly through the ruins. We found the survivor. Ava looked toward him instantly. Where? Caelum hesitated. She refuses to speak to anyone except the Moonborn Queen. Caelum immediately stepped forward.
No.
Ava turned toward him softly. She survived for a reason. His silver eyes burned fiercely. Or she was left alive intentionally. The truth of it settled coldly through the group. A trap remained possible. But Ava already knew she would go anyway. The Shadow Court wanted fear. Isolation. A queen hidden behind walls. She refused to become that. Ava touched Caelum's hand gently. I'm going. The Alpha King closed his eyes briefly, as if fighting against every protective instinct inside him. Then, finally, he nodded once, reluctantly, because he respected her choice even when it terrified him. The bond pulsed warmly at the trust between them. Caelum led them toward the far edge of the ruined village, where one small stone home somehow remained standing beneath layers of ash. Moonborn guards surrounded the structure cautiously. The moment Ava stepped closer, she felt it.
Fear. Pain.
And something else beneath it. Recognition. Inside the cottage, darkness clung unnaturally to the walls while weak firelight flickered across shattered furniture and blood-stained floors. A young woman sat near the hearth wrapped in blankets. She looked barely older than Ava, but her eyes looked ancient with grief. The survivor lifted her head slowly. The moment she saw Ava, tears filled her eyes instantly. You came. Ava stepped closer carefully. What happened here? The woman's hands trembled violently. They arrived after moonrise. Her voice cracked. Shadows wearing wolf skin. Cold silence filled the cottage. They slaughtered everyone. Ava felt nausea twist painfully inside her chest. The survivor looked toward the glowing mark at Ava's neck. Then her expression shattered completely. They're hunting you. Caelum moved closer instantly. Who? The young woman's gaze shifted toward the Alpha King. Fear crossed her face immediately. Not of him, of what she carried. There's another court leader. The room went still. Ava's pulse thundered. The one who came to the sanctuary. The woman shook her head weakly.
No.
Terror filled her eyes completely now. That one served someone worse. The fire inside the cottage flickered violently. The Shadow King has awakened. Silence crashed through the room. Even Caelum froze. Caelum's face lost all color beside the doorway. Because every wolf alive knew the old stories. The Shadow King was not merely a ruler. He was the monster responsible for the Lunar Wars. The male who nearly destroyed the Moonborn bloodline centuries ago.
Impossible. Dead.
Buried by history itself. Yet the survivor looked at them with absolute certainty. He's coming for the queen. Ava felt cold move through the bond instantly. Not from herself. From Caelum. Because for the first time, since she met him, the Alpha King felt something dangerously close to fear. The survivor's trembling gaze locked onto Ava. He said something before they left. Ava stepped closer slowly. What did he say? The young woman's tears spilled down her face. He said the Moonborn Queen belongs to him now. The cottage exploded with silver fire. Caelum's power erupted violently through the room as pure rage slammed through the bond hard enough to steal Ava's breath. The Alpha King's voice lowered into something deadly. No one claims what is mine. Outside, the storm above the ruined village darkened into black clouds while thunder shook the mountains themselves. Because somewhere beyond the kingdoms, the Shadow King had awakened. And war was no longer coming. It had already begun. The moon hung low over the mountains, shrouded in black clouds as though the sky itself feared what was coming. Beyond the sanctuary, the forests had grown eerily silent, the usual calls of night creatures swallowed by a creeping darkness that spread faster than the wind. Ava stood beside Caelum at the sanctuary gates, silver fire flickering along his dark armor, while her hands rested lightly against a fresh mark glowing on his chest. The bond pulsed between them, a living tether that mirrored their heartbeats. This is it, Caelum said grimly, his silver eyes narrowing toward the horizon. The Shadow Court moves tonight. They won't wait for dawn. Ava felt her chest tighten. She had trained for war, learned to wield her power, but nothing had prepared her for the terror of watching kingdoms tremble beneath darkness she could feel in her own bones. They want more than blood, she whispered through the bond. They want fear. Control. Submission. Caelum's jaw tightened. Every instinct inside him flared violently. They won't touch you. Not tonight. Not ever. The ground shivered beneath their feet as the first wave of black-cloaked figures appeared along the ridge of the northern valley. Silver eyes glimmered from beneath hoods, and faint pulses of shadow magic rippled outward, devouring light in its path. Ava swallowed sharply. We'll have to split the forces. Caelum's gaze locked on hers, steel in his silver eyes.
No.
We face them together. Always together. One bond. One fight. I won't let a single shadow fall on you. The Moonborn warriors tightened ranks around them, silver flames igniting along the edges of their armor. Caelum stepped beside Ava, his hand resting lightly on the hilt of his sword, eyes flicking toward the approaching shadow court. You cannot fight them all, he warned quietly. Caelum's hand lifted slowly to cup Ava's cheek. The bond flared violently in response, silver fire cascading across the chamber walls. I am not fighting them all, he said softly, his voice carrying through the night. I am fighting for her. For us. And any who dare stand against her will feel the weight of the Moonborn King's wrath. Ava's heart pounded in response. Every instinct she had trained in, every ounce of power she had embraced, surged to life beneath the mark on her neck. The first Shadow Court warrior broke through the tree line, a dagger glowing with corrupted energy in his hand. Caelum's blade materialized in a flash of silver lightning, the air snapping with raw power as he struck down the intruder before she could react. The bond pulsed violently as Ava stepped forward, silver fire spiraling from her hands to meet the shadows that crept from the forest. The battlefield erupted in chaos. Wolves shifted midair across shattered stone as magic clashed against magic, steel against darkness, while the mountains echoed with the roar of unleashed power. And through it all, Ava felt it, the Alpha King beside her, protective, relentless, unstoppable. Tonight, Caelum murmured through the bond, his lips brushing against her temple. I mark the beginning of the end for them, and no darkness will ever take you from me. Ava pressed her hand against his chest, feeling the beating of his heart through the bond, her own pulse synchronizing with his. Silver light exploded around them as their souls and bodies pulsed together, preparing to face the Shadow Court as one. The night had come, and the Moonborn Queen and her Alpha King were ready. Chapter 32. The Shadow King underestimated their bond. The battlefield burned beneath the blood moon. Silver lightning and shadow magic tore across the frozen valley while armies clashed around them in chaos, but Ava saw only one thing. Caelum chained before the Shadow King. Blood stained the Alpha King's armor while black magic continued spreading through the wound in his side like poison meant to consume his soul itself. And yet, even now, his eyes searched only for her. The bond pulsed violently between them.
Pain. Fear.
Love so overwhelming it nearly shattered her heart. The Shadow King tightened the black chains around Caelum cruelly, forcing the wounded king to his knees beneath the crimson moonlight. You feel everything he suffers, the Shadow King said softly. Darkness curled around him like smoke. That is the weakness of a completed mate bond. Ava's silver eyes glowed brighter.
No.
Moonlight exploded violently around her body. That is its strength. The battlefield trembled. The Shadow King smiled coldly. You still do not understand what you are. Ava stepped forward slowly through the war-torn valley, while silver fire spiraled around her like living stars. I know exactly what I am. The moon answered her instantly. Ancient runes ignited across the battlefield while massive waves of silver light spread outward from her feet, forcing Shadow Court warriors backward in terror. The Moonborn Queen had fully awakened. But the Shadow King only laughed. You think love makes you powerful? Darkness surged violently around him. Love destroyed your bloodline once before. The words struck like knives. Ava froze. And the Shadow King saw it immediately. The weakness. The wound left behind by history itself. The first Moonborn Queen fell because she loved too deeply. Black magic tightened around Caelum again. She chose her mate over the throne. Ava's chest tightened painfully. Caelum growled savagely despite the chains cutting into him. Do not listen to him. But the Shadow King continued. She burned kingdoms trying to save the king she loved. The blood moon darkened overhead. And, in the end, His silver eyes glowed cruelly. She failed. Silence crashed through the battlefield. The words wrapped around Ava like ice. Because deep inside, part of her feared it too. That loving Caelum so completely would destroy everything. The Shadow King stepped closer to the chained Alpha King. You will fail too. Darkness gathered around his hand. You cannot save him. Then he drove shadow magic deeper into Caelum's wound. The Alpha King roared. Ava screamed. The bond exploded with agony so violently the battlefield cracked beneath her feet. And suddenly, Caelum's pain stopped. The Shadow King froze. Because the wound in Caelum's side had begun healing. Silver light spread through the darkness, poisoning his body, while the black chains wrapped around him started cracking apart one by one.
Impossible.
The Shadow King stepped backward slowly.
No.
Ava looked up beneath the blood moon. Her silver eyes blazed brighter than the moon itself now. The completed bond glowed between her and Caelum like a living constellation stretched across the battlefield. Not weakening him, healing him, strengthening him. The Shadow King's expression darkened for the first time. The bond should be breaking him. Caelum slowly rose to his feet despite the blood covering his armor. Silver lightning exploded around him violently as the remaining black chains shattered completely. Then the Alpha King looked toward the Shadow King with murder in his eyes. You made one fatal mistake. The battlefield trembled beneath his voice. You believed our bond was a weakness. Ava stepped beside him instantly. The moment their hands touched, moonlight detonated across the valley. The blood moon itself cracked further overhead as their powers merged together completely. The completed mate bond answered the war. Silver fire and lightning spiraled around the king and queen while every moonborn warrior across the battlefield felt the surge of ancient power awaken through the kingdom.
Hope.
The Shadow King stared openly now, because the bond between them had become something he had never anticipated. Not obsession, not dependence, balance. The deeper their love became, the stronger they made each other. Ava looked towards Caelum through the storm of power surrounding them. And for the first time since the battle began, the Alpha King smiled. Not because the war was ending, because she stood beside him, still choosing him. Always. Caelum lifted his blade slowly toward the Shadow King. Silver lightning crawled along the weapon. You wanted the Moonborn Queen unleashed beneath the blood moon. The storm overhead exploded violently. Now face what you awakened. The Shadow King finally looked uncertain, because the Alpha King and his queen no longer fought separately. Their souls, their power, their love, had become one weapon beneath the blood moon, and the Shadow King had underestimated it completely. Ava's scream shattered the battlefield. The sound ripped through the mountains beneath the blood moon as the bond between her and Caelum exploded with unbearable pain. Below the sanctuary walls, the Alpha King fell to one knee. Black magic burned through his side while silver lightning erupted violently around him, destroying stone and shadow alike across the frozen battlefield. The Shadow King stood behind him smiling, satisfied. As if wounding Caelum had always been the true purpose of the war. Ava felt everything, the agony tearing through the bond, the darkness poisoning his blood. And beneath it all, Caelum's first instinct remained unchanged. Protect her. Even dying beneath the blood moon, the Alpha King still tried shielding her from his pain. The realization broke something inside Ava completely.
No.
Her voice trembled as silver fire spiraled uncontrollably around her body. Moonborn warriors backed away instinctively. The sanctuary itself began shaking, because the power inside the queen was no longer merely awakening. It was losing control. Caelum rushed toward her instantly. My queen. Ava rose slowly from the stone beneath the sanctuary wall, and the moon answered her. Silver light exploded across the sky. The blood moon cracked. Every wolf on the battlefield froze in horror as ancient runes ignited across the mountains themselves, glowing beneath layers of snow and stone hidden for centuries. The Shadow King finally looked uncertain, because the power rising from Ava was older than kingdoms, older than war. The Moonborn Queen's eyes glowed pure silver beneath the storm as she stared directly at the male who wounded her mate. And suddenly, the world understood why the Shadow Court feared the Moonborn bloodline. Ava stepped forward once. The battlefield trembled. Another step. The sky split open with silver lightning. Then her voice echoed across the valley. "You touched what belongs to me." The words carried no fear, only wrath. The Shadow King straightened slowly. Finally, darkness spread violently around him. The Queen awakens. But Ava no longer heard him clearly. The bond consumed everything. Caelum's pain, his weakening heartbeat, the desperate instinct inside her soul screaming to save him. Silver fire erupted from her body completely. Massive wings of moonlight unfolded behind her as ancient power spiraled across the battlefield like divine judgment descending from the heavens themselves. Moonborn warriors dropped to one knee instantly. Not from fear. Instinct. The Queen had become something sacred beneath the blood moon. The Shadow King smiled darkly. Yes, his shadows rose higher around him. "Show me the power your ancestors died protecting." Ava disappeared. The battlefield gasped collectively as silver light exploded forward faster than sight itself. 1 second she stood atop the sanctuary wall. The next, she stood directly in front of the Shadow King. Moonlight collided against darkness violently enough to split the battlefield apart. The Shadow King barely blocked the strike from her silver fire before being hurled backward through shattered stone. Shock crossed his face instantly, because he had expected power. Not this. Ava moved again. Relentless. Every strike carried fury strong enough to shake the mountains while moonlight tore through shadows across the battlefield. The blood moon itself flickered overhead. The Shadow King countered with darkness spiraling from his hands, black magic colliding violently against Ava's silver fire in devastating explosions. Entire sections of the battlefield shattered beneath them. But Ava never stopped advancing, because Caelum still lay bleeding beneath the blood moon. And every instinct inside her demanded vengeance. The Shadow King blocked another wave of moonfire before slamming darkness directly into Ava's chest. The impact hurled her backward across the frozen battlefield. Caelum's head lifted instantly despite the blood pouring from his wound. "Ava!" The raw terror in his voice tore through the bond. Ava rose slowly from the shattered ice. The darkness had burned her skin. But the bond answered immediately. Silver light healed the wound seconds later. The Shadow King stared openly now.
Impossible.
The Moonborn Queen was drawing power directly from the completed mate bond itself. The deeper their love, the stronger she became. Realization darkened his face instantly. That is why the Alpha King had to fall first. Ava's silver eyes narrowed. "You should have killed me instead." The Shadow King smiled slowly.
No.
Darkness gathered violently around him. "You are far more valuable alive." Ava froze. Then suddenly, the Shadow King lifted his hand toward Caelum. Black chains erupted from the battlefield and wrapped violently around the wounded Alpha King before dragging him across the frozen ground toward the darkness. Ava's heart stopped. Caelum. The Alpha King fought savagely against the chains despite his injuries, silver lightning exploding around him while black magic continued poisoning the wound in his side. But the Shadow King only laughed. "Come save your king, Moonborn Queen." The trap revealed itself instantly. Ava felt it. The battlefield. The shadows. The magic surrounding the blood moon. Everything had been designed for this moment. To force her power fully awake. To unleash the Moonborn Queen completely. And somehow, that terrified her more than the war itself. Because for the first time, Ava realized the Shadow King did not merely want her dead. He wanted her power unleashed beneath the blood moon. And Caelum was the key to making it happen. The battlefield burned beneath the blood moon. Silver lightning and shadow magic tore across the frozen valley while armies clashed around them in chaos, but Ava saw only one thing. Caelum chained before the Shadow King. Blood stained the Alpha King's armor, while black magic continued spreading through the wound in his side like poison meant to consume his soul itself. And yet, even now, his eyes searched only for her. The bond pulsed violently between them.
Pain. Fear.
Love so overwhelming it nearly shattered her heart. The Shadow King tightened the black chains around Caelum cruelly, forcing the wounded king to his knees beneath the crimson moonlight. "You feel everything he suffers," the Shadow King said softly. Darkness curled around him like smoke. "That is the weakness of a completed mate bond." Ava's silver eyes glowed brighter.
No.
Moonlight exploded violently around her body. "That is its strength." The battlefield trembled. The Shadow King smiled coldly. "You still do not understand what you are." Ava stepped forward slowly through the war-torn valley, while silver fire spiraled around her like living stars. "I know exactly what I am." The moon answered her instantly. Ancient runes ignited across the battlefield while massive waves of silver light spread outward from her feet, forcing Shadow Court warriors backward in terror. The Moonborn Queen had fully awakened, but the Shadow King only laughed. "You think love makes you powerful?" Darkness surged violently around him. "Love destroyed your bloodline once before." The words struck like knives. Ava froze, and the Shadow King saw it immediately. The weakness. The wound left behind by history itself. The first Moonborn Queen fell because she loved too deeply. Black magic tightened around Caelum again. She chose her mate over the throne. Ava's chest tightened painfully. Caelum growled savagely despite the chains cutting into him. "Do not listen to him." But the Shadow King continued. "She burned kingdoms trying to save the king she loved." The blood moon darkened overhead. And, in the end, his silver eyes glowed cruelly. She failed. Silence crashed through the battlefield. The words wrapped around Ava like ice. Because, deep inside, part of her feared it too. That loving Caelum so completely would destroy everything. The Shadow King stepped closer to the chained Alpha King. "You will fail too." Darkness gathered around his hand. "You cannot save him." Then he drove shadow magic deeper into Caelum's wound. The Alpha King roared. Ava screamed. The bond exploded with agony so violently the battlefield cracked beneath her feet. And suddenly, Caelum's pain stopped. The Shadow King froze. Because the wound in Caelum's side had begun healing. Silver light spread through the darkness, poisoning his body, while the black chains wrapped around him started cracking apart one by one.
Impossible.
The Shadow King stepped backward slowly.
No.
Ava looked up beneath the blood moon. Her silver eyes blazed brighter than the moon itself now. The completed bond glowed between her and Caelum like a living constellation stretched across the battlefield. Not weakening him, healing him, strengthening him. The Shadow King's expression darkened for the first time. The bond should be breaking him. Caelum slowly rose to his feet despite the blood covering his armor. Silver lightning exploded around him violently as the remaining black chains shattered completely. Then the Alpha King looked toward the Shadow King with murder in his eyes. "You made one fatal mistake." The battlefield trembled beneath his voice. "You believed our bond was a weakness." Ava stepped beside him instantly. The moment their hands touched, moonlight detonated across the valley. The blood moon itself cracked further overhead as their powers merged together completely. The completed mate bond answered the war. Silver fire and lightning spiraled around the king and queen while every moonborn warrior across the battlefield felt the surge of ancient power awaken through the kingdom.
Hope.
The Shadow King stared openly now, because the bond between them had become something he had never anticipated. Not obsession, not dependence. Balance. The deeper their love became, the stronger they made each other. Ava looked towards Caelum through the storm of power surrounding them. And, for the first time since the battle began, the Alpha King smiled. Not because the war was ending, because she stood beside him, still choosing him. Always. Caelum lifted his blade slowly toward the Shadow King. Silver lightning crawled along the weapon. You wanted the Moonborn Queen unleashed beneath the blood moon. The storm overhead exploded violently. Now face what you awakened. The Shadow King finally looked uncertain, because the Alpha King and his queen no longer fought separately. Their souls, their power, their love, had become one weapon beneath the blood moon, and the Shadow King had underestimated it completely. The battlefield trembled beneath the blood moon. Silver lightning ripped across the sky while fire and shadow consumed the frozen valley surrounding the sanctuary of Selene. Wolves fought and died beneath ancient magic older than kingdoms themselves. But at the center of the war, everything stopped revolving around armies, around crowns, around destiny itself, because the Moonborn Queen had fully awakened. Ava stood beside Caelum while silver fire spiraled around their joined hands like living stars. The completed mate bond pulsed between them, brighter now than the blood moon hanging overhead. The Shadow King stared openly. For the first time since the war began, he looked uncertain. The realization spread quickly through the battlefield. The darkness feared her. Caelum stepped slightly in front of Ava instinctively, sword raised while silver lightning crawled violently across the blade. Even now, even with her power shaking the heavens, the Alpha King still protected her first. Ava felt it through the bond and stepped closer beside him until their shoulders touched. Together. Always together. The Shadow King's voice echoed coldly through the storm. The moon should never have chosen you. Ava lifted her glowing silver eyes toward him.
No.
Moonfire erupted violently around her. It chose exactly right. The battlefield exploded. The Shadow King unleashed darkness powerful enough to blacken the sky itself as corrupted magic surged toward them like a tidal wave meant to devour everything in its path. But Ava did not retreat. The Moonborn Queen stepped forward, and the moon answered. Silver light descended from the fractured blood moon above, crashing into the battlefield with devastating force. Ancient runes ignited beneath the frozen valley while moonfire tore through shadow magic in brilliant waves. The kingdoms watched in awe, because Ava no longer looked merely like a queen. She looked divine. The Shadow King roared as darkness collided violently against moonlight. The impact shattered mountainsides. Moonborn warriors were thrown backward across the battlefield while Shadow Court soldiers screamed beneath silver fire consuming the corruption inside them. Caelum fought beside her like living wrath. Every enemy reaching Ava died instantly beneath his blade. Every shadow approaching her burned beneath silver lightning. The Alpha King had become exactly what the kingdoms feared most. A male with nothing left to lose except the woman he loved. And that made him unstoppable. The bond surged hotter between them with every heartbeat. Stronger. Faster. Alive. Ava suddenly realized something terrifying. The moon was not merely giving her power. It was responding to emotion. To love. To devotion. The deeper the bond between her and Caelum became, the stronger the Moonborn magic answered her call. The Shadow King realized it too. His expression darkened with horror. No. Ava stepped toward him through the storm. You spent centuries trying to destroy the Moonborn bloodline. Silver fire spiraled violently around her body. You murdered queens. The battlefield shook harder. You destroyed kingdoms. The blood moon cracked again overhead. But you never understood the truth. The Shadow King backed away for the first time. Because the queen standing before him no longer looked human beneath the storm of moonlight surrounding her. Ava's voice echoed across the battlefield like prophecy itself. The moon never gave power to blood alone. Her fingers tightened around Caelum's hand. It gave power to love strong enough to survive darkness. The completed mate bond exploded. Silver light consumed the battlefield entirely. The Shadow King screamed as moonfire tore through his shadows, burning away centuries of corrupted magic while the blood moon shattered completely above the valley. Darkness collapsed across the battlefield. The Shadow Court soldiers froze in terror, because for the first time in centuries, The night no longer belonged to shadows. It belonged to the queen. The moon had chosen its ruler. And beneath silver fire and shadow darkness, the world finally understood why the Moonborn bloodline could never truly be destroyed. The shattered moonlight rained across the battlefield like silver fire. Fragments of the broken blood moon drifted through the storm-dark sky, while Shadow Court soldiers retreated in terror beneath the overwhelming power surging from the Moonborn Queen. The night belonged to Ava now. To her. To the king standing beside her. The battlefield trembled beneath the force of their bond while silver lightning and moonfire spiraled violently around them, like a storm born from love and wrath together. The Shadow King staggered backward. For the first time in centuries, darkness had been forced to retreat. His silver eyes burned with fury beneath the shattered shadows cloaking his body. You cannot stop what is coming. Ava stepped forward beside Caelum. Moonlight answered instantly. Ancient runes ignited beneath the frozen battlefield, while the completed mate bond between king and queen pulsed brighter than the heavens themselves. Caelum's hand tightened around hers. The Alpha King's wound had nearly healed completely now, silver fire burning away the remaining traces of corruption through the strength of their bond. Not weakness. Never weakness. Their love had become power itself. Caelum lifted his blade slowly toward the Shadow King. We already have. The Shadow King roared. Darkness exploded outward from him in massive waves as the battlefield cracked apart beneath corrupted magic older than kingdoms themselves. Entire mountainside shattered. The dead rose from the frozen ground. Shadow creatures formed from centuries of hatred and war crawled screaming from the darkness surrounding him. The Moonborn warriors faltered. Even Caelum stared in horror, because this was no longer merely battle magic. This was extinction. The Shadow King spread his arms wide beneath the ruined blood moon. I am the end of your world. Darkness swallowed the battlefield completely. Then Ava stepped forward, and the moon chose her again. Silver light erupted from her body with enough force to split the heavens open. Massive wings of moonfire unfolded behind her, while the shattered remains of the blood moon began reforming slowly overhead. The battlefield froze. Because no Moonborn Queen in history had ever done this. Ava was not simply wielding the moon. The moon was answering her. Caelum looked at her beneath the storm with something dangerously close to awe moving through the bond. Not because she was powerful. Because she still reached for his hand despite it. Still chose him beside her throne. Always. Ava intertwined her fingers with his tightly. And the completed bond unleashed completely. The battlefield exploded with silver fire. Every Moonborn warrior felt it instantly. Hope surged through the kingdom like wildfire. Wounded wolves rose again. Shadow creatures screamed beneath moonlight consuming them from the inside out. The darkness began dying. The Shadow King's expression finally cracked with real fear.
No.
Ava's silver eyes blazed brighter than stars. You built your kingdom on fear. Moonfire spiraled violently around her. You believed darkness made you eternal. The Alpha King stepped beside her. Silver lightning erupted across the battlefield. But love survived you. The words shattered something ancient inside the war itself. The completed mate bond expanded across the battlefield like a living heartbeat, washing over wolves, mountains, and broken kingdoms alike. The Shadow Court soldiers began collapsing beneath it. Because the bond between Ava and Caelum carried something darkness could never create. Belonging, devotion, hope. The Shadow King screamed in fury and launched himself toward them through exploding shadows. Caelum met him instantly. The battlefield erupted into chaos again as silver lightning collided violently against darkness beneath the restored moonlight overhead. The Alpha King fought like divine wrath unleashed. Every strike carried fury. Every movement carried love. Because this was no longer only about kingdoms. This was about protecting the future Ava deserved. The future they deserved together. The Shadow King slashed darkness across Caelum's armor while black magic exploded against silver fire around them. But the Alpha King did not fall. Because Ava's power flowed through the bond directly into him now, strengthening him, healing him, loving him. The Shadow King realized too late. They had become unstoppable together. Ava lifted both hands toward the heavens. The restored moon answered completely. Silver light descended across the battlefield in one final devastating wave that consumed every remaining shadow in existence. The Shadow King screamed as darkness burned away from his body beneath moonfire older than death itself.
No.
I am eternal. Ava's voice echoed across the kingdom like prophecy fulfilled.
No.
The moonlight swallowed him whole. You were only the darkness before dawn. And then, the Shadow King vanished. The battlefield fell silent. No shadows remained. Only silver moonlight spilling across the valley where war once stood. The kingdom stared in stunned silence at the Alpha King and his queen standing together beneath the restored moon. Alive, victorious, bound soul to soul. And for the first time in centuries, the world no longer feared the moonborn throne. It believed in it. Spring came slowly to the kingdoms. Snow melted from the mountains surrounding the sanctuary of Selene, while silver rivers flowed once more through valleys that had nearly been destroyed by war. The scars of the battlefield still remained in places, but life had returned beside them. Flowers now grew where darkness once stood. The shadow court had fallen. The blood moon was gone. And for the first time in centuries, peace belonged to the kingdoms again. Across the restored sanctuary, wolves gathered beneath silver banners fluttering in the warm wind. Moonborn warriors stood proudly beside southern pack leaders once divided by fear and war. No kingdoms remained separated now. No bloodlines stood above another. The old world had ended beneath the blood moon. A better one had begun beside the moonborn throne. Inside the sanctuary cathedral, moonlight spilled through towering stained-glass windows while silver candles illuminated the ancient hall prepared for the ceremony. Ava stood quietly near the altar in a gown woven from silver silk and moonfire thread, her dark curls cascading down her back beneath the restored moonborn crown.
Queen.
The title no longer felt heavy now, because she finally understood what the throne truly meant. Not power, protection. Love strong enough to rebuild what darkness tried to destroy. Behind her, soft footsteps approached. The bond awakened instantly. Warmth spread through her chest before Caelum even touched her. The Alpha King stopped behind her slowly, dressed in black ceremonial armor edged with silver beneath the cathedral light. Beautiful, powerful, and looking at her like he still could not believe she was real. Ava smiled softly. You're staring again. A rough laugh escaped him quietly. You are impossible not to look at. The bond purred warmly between them. Caelum stepped closer until his arms wrapped carefully around her waist from behind, holding her against him while moonlight surrounded them both.
Peace.
After everything.
Peace.
Ava leaned gently into him. The kingdoms are waiting. Let them wait another minute. She laughed softly beneath the moonlight. The sound alone nearly undid him. Because even after war, after blood and darkness, she still carried light inside her. Caelum lowered his forehead against hers as the completed mate bond glowed warmly between them. You saved us. Ava turned slowly within his arms. We saved each other. The Alpha King's silver eyes softened instantly. Always. The word moved through the bond silently between them. A knock sounded softly at the cathedral doors. Caelum entered with the faintest smile. It's time, my king, my queen. The great sanctuary bells began ringing across the mountains. The kingdoms had gathered. And, together, Caelum and Ava walked toward their future. The cathedral erupted into light as the doors opened. Thousands of wolves filled the sanctuary halls beneath silver banners and restored moonlight. Warriors who once stood divided now knelt together before the moonborn throne. Not from fear, respect,
Hope.
Ava felt emotion tighten painfully in her chest as she looked across the gathered kingdoms. Children laughing, families reunited, wolves alive because darkness had finally ended. Caelum's hand remained firmly intertwined with hers as they ascended the ancient throne platform together. Not king before queen, not queen behind king. Side by side, equal beneath the moon. The High Elder stepped forward slowly. The Moonborn bloodline has returned. Silver light illuminated the cathedral. The kingdoms stand united. The gathered wolves lowered their heads together. And the moon has chosen its rulers. Ava looked towards Caelum. The Alpha King already watched her. Not the crowd. Not the throne. Her. As though even now, after everything, she remained the center of his world. And perhaps she always would. The High Elder lifted the ancient crown of the United Kingdoms. Do you, Caelum Draven, swear your strength, your soul, and your life to the protection of these kingdoms and the queen beside you? Caelum never looked away from Ava.
Ido.
The elder turned toward her. Do you, Ava of the Moonborn bloodline, swear your light, your heart, and your reign to these kingdoms and the king beside you? Ava's fingers tightened softly around Caelum's hand. With all that I am. The crowns were placed upon them together. Silver moonlight exploded across the sanctuary. The completed mate bond ignited brilliantly beneath the restored moon while the kingdoms erupted into cheers powerful enough to shake the mountains themselves. King and queen, bound by destiny, strengthened by love, chosen by the moon itself. Caelum leaned down slowly until his forehead rested against Ava's beneath the roaring celebration surrounding them. You were never meant to be destroyed, he whispered softly. Emotion burned in her eyes.
No.
Ava smiled through tears beneath the moonlight. I was meant to find you, and beneath the restored heavens. The Alpha King kissed his queen while the kingdoms celebrated the dawn of a future no longer ruled by darkness. A future built by love. Forever.